Good evening and welcome to the 33rd meeting of fiscal year 2024. I would like to now call the meeting to order. Right? We can first begin by introducing the members of the board and then our staff. If you'd like to start.
Jim Davis, member.
Maggie Oldfield, member.
Cheryl Tagayas, secretary.
And on Zoom, we have Sean
Fahey, member.
Great. And myself, Meredith Hall, serving as chair. Now to introduce our staff. On Zoom, we have Tim.
Tim Zerwinski, Director of Planning and Community Development.
And with us tonight, we have Julia. Great. Thank you and welcome, everyone. We can now begin with our administrative items. The first item is the approval of minutes, and we have minutes to approve from March 28th.
I've read them and I'm okay with them.
April 9th, April 16th, and April 24th.
Those are still in the process of being edited, that are being looked at by Cheryl. So that we're
gonna. I'm ready with the 28th, March 28th.
With the March 28th. And
I'm good on the 28th.
All right. So motion to approve.
How about Sean?
Sean, I'm sorry.
Yes, I am also good with the 28th.
Great.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended for the March 28th meeting.
Second.
Second.
Right. Roll call.
Can I just
Yep.
make? There's. I'm looking on screen and it says Thursday, March 28th, 2019. Should be 2024. So with that correction, is that
Okay.
At the top, I have it as the 24th.
you do? All right. So I don't know what happened then.
That's fine.
All right. So with
Okay.
that, I will.
We're ready for a roll call.
Ready for a roll call. Yeah. Sorry
Okay.
about
Cheryl.
that. Yes.
Maggie.
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
Sean.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. And we'll take care of those future minutes next time. So now the discussion of our next meeting dates. We have a May 23rd for this month, and then in June 13th and June 27th would be our next regular scheduled meetings, unless we add another meeting, which we may discuss on the East Milton Overlay.
So 23rd, 13th, and what else? I'm sorry.
And the 27th?
Okay.
Tim, is there anything also maybe you can add to the update if there's any other meetings? And I'll introduce you for your planning and community development update.
I don't think there's anything. I mean, we may look at, under the East Milton agenda item, if it might be appropriate to have a separate meeting or schedule a forum, depending on, what Josh is up to. But we can cross that bridge when we come to it later. Couple quick things. I emailed the board earlier today. Really good news. We have brought on a new assistant director. She'll be starting on May 20th. I gave you a little bit of background on her in the email. I'll let her introduce herself at the next meeting, which will be on the 23rd. But we were really had some good applicants. I think we've got a good one. Everyone loves Josh. Big shoes to fill, but different shoes will be walking this road as I mix metaphors. But we think she'll be good. Cheyenne Frazier is her name. So we're very looking forward to bringing her on, training her up, and bringing her on board. So that'll be good. The next thing, I forget if I mentioned this during the last update, but I had a meeting about it today, so I just wanted to bring it up. We got a technical assistance grant from MAPC. They do technical assistance grant funding on a rolling annual basis to do a regional project with town of Norwood and town of Walpole and potentially town of Randolph on language access in kind of government work. We obviously are communicating primarily in English, obviously, here at these meetings and in our communications. But, obviously we live in a very diverse region. Milton is, compared to peers, a relatively diverse town. So we applied for technical assistance from MAPC to do a little bit of research on what our language needs are in town in terms of, what other languages are spoken by residents, either, primarily or exclusively non-English speakers, and then secondarily, what can we do, in sort of a kind of, changing of policies or budgetary resources or whatever in terms of communicating with those folks, getting those folks into the fold in terms of public outreach, public meetings, involvement in town government, involvement in town activities, getting, information out to people, getting information back from people. So we're very much looking forward to participating in that. The health department has been doing a little bit of this work. They obviously have a really keen interest in being able to meet people where they are in the language that they speak. So, we'll keep you updated on that. That project's probably not going to kick off until July. And there will be, public engagement, public outreach component to that project, which we'll want, at the very least to publicize to the planning board, if not, participate through the board. So we'll keep you posted on that one. Another item I wanted to kind of inform you about, and it may be something you may have heard about either through social media or through your networks. But the DCR issued what's called a request for expressions of interest in their property at 7 Brush Hill Road. This is the sort of yellow brick building that's the first parcel on Brush Hill Road when you get into town from Mattapan Square. This is the request for expression of interest is kind of basically DCR saying, we haven't used this property for its purpose for quite some time. We're not quite sure what to do. I'm putting words in their mouths, but they're looking for, is there any interest in either the development community or the Milton community or from town of Milton or from nonprofits or other government agencies to take on this property. I think the interest that they have is preservation of the building. The building is a I think they call it a good example of mid-century public building. It's not a bad looking building. There is they gave out they distributed a document that I'll distribute to the board just so you can take a look at it. The request for expression of interest is not like an RFP or anything like that. They haven't indicated any plans to dispose of it just yet. I think they're kind of shaking the tree for ideas of what to do with this and then moving on to a next step, once they have some input. There's no deadline on responses or anything, but I do know there is a group of residents and town meeting members on the west side that have taken a real interest in this property. They've actually scheduled a visit with DCR tomorrow to kind of check it out. So this is something that I'm not entirely sure how the town or the planning board will be involved, but I suspect it'll be a topic of discussion kind of as we're going forward, because it is potentially an opportunity for some new and exciting use over there. So I will make a note to send out that request for expression of interest. Is really just informational on the property and kind of what they anticipate the preservation and restoration costs will be. And then as I said, as this group of residents out there may be mobilizing with their own ideas, they may come and chat with you about that. So could be fodder for future discussion. And then finally, and you may have seen this on the front page of the Times this morning, the 1200 Brush Hill Road, the Brush Hill Rehabilitation Center, got a variance from the Board of Appeals for a relatively small expansion. I'll let them, eventually when they come in for a site plan approval application, kind of explain the nuts and bolts of it. But basically, the licensing department in the state that kind of gives licenses for these types of facilities has a new set of policies regarding basically the density, the internal density of bedrooms in these facilities. Basically, what that kind of means is If they've got, 4 people in a bedroom, they've got to reduce it down to, I don't know what the number is. I don't want to, say the wrong thing, but basically reduce the number of people that are staying in each room in their facility. And as a consequence, in order to meet the level of patients that they're allowed to have under their existing permits, they actually need to expand. So that'll be something that's going to be coming up. It's relatively small. They have one abutter, Fuller Village, which they've been, working very closely with and keeping apprised of their plans. But that'll just be a site plan approval application that's going to be coming in the relatively near future. That's all I've got for now. So thank you.
So Tim, I just have a question about that Brush Hill Road. Now, does the town have an opportunity to express interest in purchasing it? Would we, as a town of Milton, ever have right of first refusal?
I don't think there's anything like right of first refusal, but the request for expression of interest is really just if you have an idea for this property, and it could be just anyone off the street saying hey, you should put an ice cream shop there, and you send that into DCR, or it could be the town saying we would buy this and make it into something or other. We've been talking at a really broad level at the staff level about what are the opportunities here? We haven't really had a really deep conversation. One of the reasons, bringing it to you all tonight is to kind of have, just make you aware that this thing is out there. But in terms of, Maggie, right of first refusal, if the town wanted to say hey, we want to do this, then we would. That would obviously be something the select board, would be up to. But, at this stage, it's really, they're looking for what is the universe of possibilities for a potential reuse of this property. And so, that would need to be at the town level, a kind of a much more broad and public conversation, before, the town would do anything about that. But, again, it's, they're really looking for ideas. And, again, there's, like I said, there's a group of residents that are kind of organizing around this, and you may hear from them in the near future.
And are they looking to sell or to rent?
I don't know.
I read it. It sounds to me like a long-term lease.
Yeah, they tend to want to do
I'm not sure if that's what-
leases.
That
Be a current idea.
That change.org thing.
Sorry, Tim.
No, I just said, it's when you say rent, there's like a big gulf between, a 5-year lease and a 99-year lease. But that's what the state tends to do with these things. I think they're really interested in, someone fixing up the building, quite frankly. That's the read that I got from that document. But yeah.
It's an interesting location. We have town-owned property next to it. There's a canoe launch there.
I was going to say recreational facilities could be there.
Yeah,
Something
and
really interesting.
the Neponset Trail. So it is when the trail from there towards Hyde Park is not as sort of natural or interesting in terms of a ride or a walk as the path from Mattapan towards Dorchester and so forth. So I do think it's an interesting opportunity.
Yeah, and I would think that if they ever wanted to sell, I'm a huge advocate of Milton purchasing land. We never know what our needs are in the future. So that's why I was wondering if it would be up for sale. And I think the town should pursue it and see how much the interest the state has in selling it.
Tim, can I ask 2 questions? First question is, how much square footage is there in the building? And second question, my recollection is that we had some town offices outside of the town of Milton. Is my recollection incorrect?
Yeah, the retirement officer for the town has office space, I think, in Quincy.
Okay. Is that Tim? Is that because we don't have enough? Tim, is that because we don't have enough space in Milton, or is there another reason?
I don't want to speak out of turn. I know that there are empty desks around. I don't know if that particular office would be a cubicle role or an office role. So I really don't know. I also and you know, in the time that I spent away from Milton, you know, the retirement officer actually used to be next door to me when I worked in town halls, the assistant town planner. And then I came back and my office was his office. And so it's like, where'd this person go? I don't know if we share those services with other towns, which may be another explanation for being offsite. So I don't actually know entirely. But yeah. Do you have another question?
And how big is the was the space? Yeah, what was the square footage?
Yeah, I'm gonna email you the document right now, and you can kind of see
Great.
it rather than just me scroll through.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. 2,900 square feet, and then the
Thanks,
land
Tim.
is obviously bigger than that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask,
Right.
what's the size of the property?
It's sort of a narrow, long.
It looks
But
pretty big.
their document doesn't actually have a site plan, so I think you just have to go to the GIS.
Yeah, if you
online
went to the
mapping
GIS,
tool. Yeah.
It doesn't come up as 7 Brush Hill Road, though. The closest I can
One of
get
the
was-
questions I had is whether they do have a site plan, because they do have a small parking lot there. Be
right,
good to know how, you know, how much land it really is with the building.
Great, Tim. Anything else?
That is it.
Okay, great. So now we can go to our next agenda item, which is citizens speak. And if there's anyone here from the public who would like to join us, please feel free. And Tim, let us know if there's anyone on Zoom too.
Is it my old one, or did you give me this one? It's okay.
As you know, I was very interactive with you guys and others in town about the MBTA zoning when that was being developed, the proposal was being developed. And I've been tuning in remotely to meetings recently to, you know, try to hear where the discussion's going. But, you know, I'd stay on till 10:30 or something, and I just, you know, wasn't going to do it anymore because the memory care just went on so far. So I really haven't heard you guys discuss where you're going or what your strategy is or how you're making progress. And I think it's important to make progress. And I don't know whether the sense of the board is to kind of, or the sense of the town is to wait and hear what the court says and then take action. But I think it's important that the planning board be thinking about what the next steps are and, you know, learn some lessons from what went on there and be working towards something. And whether at this point it's discussion of options, depending how the court comes up. But I think, you know, I think you should be looking toward trying to develop a 25% compliant plan, knowing that there could be flexibility if, you know, depending what happens with the court. So I'm really, you know, kind of interesting to hear, and I enjoyed seeing the agenda because it looks like there's a couple of things, but maybe there will be time tonight to discuss it. And you know, I think it's important. When the vote went down that defeated the plan that had been put forward, that was in February, and you know, we're 3 months later, and you know, and there was at that time there were articles in the paper and everything about the planning board is ready to make progress and move, and we've got our ideas how we're going to move forward, but it's 3 months later and we haven't heard a discussion of that yet. So I really hope you guys engage seriously in looking toward the next steps there, because regardless what happens with the courts, I think it'll put the town in a lot better light if it just didn't, you know, shove it aside, you know, until there was some resolution, that there was some discussion and public discussion and thinking of a concept for moving forward, whatever the court case is. So that's all I have to say.
Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Anyone else? Yes, like to join us? Good evening, and if you could just state your name and address for the record,
Yes.
that'd be great.
My name is Christine Grundy, and I live at 68 Robertson Street in Quincy. And I only am speaking so you won't wonder who this mystery person is here, because I live right outside East Milton Square, so I'm interested to see what's happening with it. And I've been trying to follow it online, but just kind of on a whim, I just decided to come to the meeting and see if I could get any updates and find out what's happening. I'm not trying to put forward any point of view at all. Except that I love shopping at the fruit center. So I hope anything that we do doesn't make them want to pull out of the town of Milton. And I also love the Milton Library. I use it all the time, so.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. And Tim, any hands up on Zoom?
We've got a few hands up on Zoom. We've got Eric Hokinson.
Okay. Great. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Eric Hokinson, 583 Elliott Street. I'll be as brief as possible so the board can get on with its business. And like the first speaker, excited to see the MBTA communities zoning on the agenda. And I think that there's still a lot of interest from the public, having had a number of conversations with neighbors wondering what's going on, what's the board doing, when are we going to have the survey. And I think that having that survey, finalized and out on the street so people can respond to it as soon as possible is really critical. There's a lot of momentum and interest, and I feel like waiting, especially with the summer coming up, people get busy. And I fear that we'll have a repeat of last fall where people were just becoming aware of it. And I don't doubt that anybody's aware of it, but having missed an opportunity to provide input, I think that while the town has a head start on the zoning with, the progress being made on site plan review and an understanding of the compliance model, I know that there are still components of the plan that need to be taken care of before you can move on to the next aspect of it, like the increased affordability requirement and the associated study. I think everybody supports that as we heard. And I just don't want to, be rushing it at the end when we have this time, knowing that the courts will decide one way or another what we have to comply with. So I just really feel like having that survey out as soon as possible will be critical. And then also sharing with the public the work plan and the timeline. I think identifying the decision points that the board will make, what the decision-making process will be, what decisions have to get made, when are you going to make them, and what are the reasons for that. I think that will really ensure both an efficient process, but also really help the public understand how we get to the end goal, wherever that may be. So thank you very much. Looking forward to continuing to follow this important work.
Thank you so much. And next, Tim.
We have Kyle Johnson.
Okay, welcome, Kyle.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Perfect. Thank you. Spencer Kyle Johnson, 127 Blue Hill Avenue, and I'm also a town meeting member for Precinct 10. And I also came to ask about and raise the issue of MBTA zoning. I'm glad to see it on the agenda. I want to briefly, however, since 7 Brush Hill came up, and I'm a neighbor around the corner from there and have been involved in some conversations about that, just want to emphasize that many people in the neighborhoods around that, in particularly Precinct 1, 2, 10, and 2, are very interested in and very much feel the need for some community spaces or recreational spaces in our neighborhoods that we feel is lacking. So I'm excited and looking forward to continuing to discuss the possibilities there if we can work something with DCR, or at least hopefully influence their decision-making process. But briefly, I'll just add about the Communities Act that there is a feeling that I and many have of, I think, wanting some sort of comprehensive update and sense of timeline, similar to what's been shared already. I know that, around the time of the town meeting vote, and as also again at the time of the referendum, indications and, I don't want to, I'm not going to put words in anyone's mouth. I won't say, not promises. I understand they were aspirational, but indications were made that the planning board would move very quickly to provide its own zoning article in order to help prevent some of the potential consequences of non-compliance, and to reassure the residents that there was a plan to help avoid some of the consequences of non-compliance. We've passed some of the benchmarks that were thrown out, including the recent town meeting, and others that were mentioned. And so I think there is a sense of concern that we are now in a situation where some sort of court-imposed zoning is a highly likely possibility. And I think that would be disappointing to both yes and no voters alike, who would like to maintain local control and would like to find a consensus that we can work through together as a community that comes from us, all sides of town. So I'm just saying that I would be helpful to have some sort of update, some sense of timeline for the public to help us understand where things stand after some of those initial benchmarks were mentioned. Thank you very much. I appreciate all your work on this.
Great, thank you. Tim, next.
We have Jennifer Raymond.
Okay, welcome, Jennifer.
Good evening. Thanks so much. Like my colleagues who have just spoken about the MBTA Communities Act, that was what I wanted to speak to this evening as well. I was glad that it's on the agenda. One of the big challenges over the past, several months, really, leading up to the February election, and even since then, seems to be a real confusion about the details of the MBTA Communities Act. I talked to people across town. I've read postings on Facebook where people are really misinformed about the details of the law and the process of decision making. And so I think that right now the planning board really has an opportunity to be proactive and to launch a community process sooner rather than later. So as the planning board is, looking ahead to working with the technical consultant, considering, the legal implications of what's happening and how they're going to develop a plan, I would encourage the planning board to be working now to lay out what that community process is. Too often and not specific to Milton, but kind of everywhere, too often on policy issues, we wait until the end when a plan has already been created. And then at the very last minute, we're asking for feedback on something. And we have a chance to do it differently here. And I hope that the planning board will really take the initiative and get out in front of it and be proactive and do that. So I think considering what the process, letting people know what the process is that the town and the consultants will follow, being as transparent as possible with the public about what decisions need to be made, making information available, why certain decisions are being made the way they are, and establishing a means and a schedule for updating the public on the process, as well as establishing opportunities for the public to, one, learn more, and two, to provide input and ask questions from the beginning, all the way through the process. I think that, and also to let people understand what are the criteria. How is the planning board going to decide? What are the criteria for deciding? That was a big question that came up in the election about, well, who decided to do this? And a lot of people hadn't read the law at all. So being clear about what do we need to do to comply with the law, and how are we going to decide what that zoning is or is not going to look like. So I just would really encourage the planning board. I think it's a real opportunity to take initiative and to be proactive and to really lead and guide our town through a really important process.
great. Thank
And
you.
so I appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I think, because we do want to get onto the business, so Tim, is there anyone else?
Nope.
Okay, great.
Wait, can I just say that,
Yeah.
just in response? So I believe that, just to correct possibly a misstatement that might cause confusion, that I believe there's no precedent for the state to come in and impose local zoning. So I just want to clarify that fact. As of today, in Massachusetts, there isn't, and Tim has said that. And I also just would like to invite the public to come to any of our meetings. We're here, we have quite a few meetings, and we always welcome visitors in person. And Meredith has always been very kind to let people speak. And I think Tim has done a great job on posting all the information on the town's website. And I know that the town's website can be a little tricky to follow because at times I have a hard time following things too. But I think Tim does a great job of keeping the all of what we're working on updated. And so I've been an advocate of maybe trying to have a Facebook page for the planning board, but because it seems to me like Facebook is the place that people go, but that's been discussed as a lot on the staff. So I just hope that people do they don't forget that the planning department has all the information on the website.
So I would like for us to put on the agenda at our next meeting really a robust conversation about community engagement, because I've said before, I don't think expecting people to be able to come to our meetings and wait till the very end at 10 or 11, or even if it gets too earlier, it just doesn't work for everyone. We need more different opportunities than just that one. And the survey is one, but we need more. And I'd like that to be built into the schedule that we talk about
Absolutely.
with UTIL. And then
Consultant. Yeah, and we'll talk about that tonight. I thought we would go into that, but
Can I just make one other comment too? The quest or the concern raised about state imposed zoning, I think could have come from, I read the AG's complaint, and it's in the AG's complaint, that to find that that the AG has the right and the authority to enforce the law, that the guidelines are enforceable, and that Milton should comply with the law within 3 months of the decision, and if not, then a special master be appointed to develop the zoning. So it is a risk. It's in the complaint. So I don't think it's just something that somebody's saying out of fear. So I just wanted to make that statement too.
and we plan to not be at that point where that would be necessary. So with that moving forward on our next agenda item, the next item is new business, the discussion of the proposed economic development plan. And Tim, if you want to just highlight this, we presented this at our during your update, but can we just go through it again a little bit for those who missed the last meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an initiative coming out of the town administrator's office. We were able to get an earmark through the fiscal 24. I think it was the fiscal 24, it might have been the fiscal 23 state budget, to do economic development work in town, which is a very broad umbrella that we, talked about a lot of, different things that we could do. And I think, having gone through a couple years of, really talking about housing through the MBTA community zoning conversation, trying to have a broader townwide conversation about, some non-housing policies that we could, think about for, fostering economic development in the town. We just went through town meeting. It looked a little dicey at a rate of 2 articles per night, but I heard you all made it through last night, so that was good. Budget season, is constantly, a tug of war between, competing priorities and competing resources. And we thought it was a good idea to think about how do we start expanding, the sort of the fiscal pie here in town. And so MAPC does this type of planning for different municipalities. I can share a plan that they did for town of Marshfield recently that we kind of modeled our scope of work after. And so, there's a number of different things that the plan is going to be going after. Number one, as is typical of all the work that we see from MAPC, and we put a big priority on a robust community engagement process to make sure that we are getting input, ideas, feedback from all of the neighborhoods in town, because this is a townwide plan, with townwide effects and consequences. But really, the two, I think, big tasks in this plan are looking at our existing business districts, evaluating, what their composition is. Is there anything we can do to kind of boost or bolster those business districts? I think we've had a little bit of this conversation, through the Milton Village zoning. We're continuing to have this conversation through the East Milton zoning. Really kind of targeting land use regulation via zoning. Which obviously, through, mixed use redevelopment and things like that, has the potential to, expand the tax base in our commercial districts. We also want to look at other policies that the town can pursue, again, to make a more vibrant, dynamic, potentially, larger commercial tax base here in town by kind of, really understanding, what possibilities are for our existing business districts. I'm looking at the.
Sorry, you just froze for a minute. Could you just repeat what you just said?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're fine now.
I was frozen in a really not good pose. But the other aspect of this plan is having a conversation about what is the appetite for either expanding commercial districts. Am I frozen again?
Yep, but we could hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My internet, I don't know what's going on, but I'll try to wrap this up. Talking to different parts of town about, and the example I give is when we went through the Ice House zoning a bunch of years ago, which obviously turned into a 40B. But, when that project was coming along, a lot of folks on the west side said, we are desperate for commercial amenities over here. And it was a real priority, for that zoning and then, for the 40B project to have a commercial component. This board rezoned a portion of, the corner of Brook Road and Blue Hills Parkway in the Brook Road overlay, again, with an understanding that this is an existing, it's not a commercial district, but it is a little node of commercial activity. Over the years, there have been different conversations and efforts around, potentially giving expanded property rights to our pre-existing non-conforming businesses, throughout town. So I think we want to have that conversation of, are there places where there are gaps in our commercial tax base, our commercial land use pattern? Are there parts of town that want to see commercial amenities but aren't getting them because of our existing policies? So this is a conversation that I think, people have in the abstract a lot, especially when it's budget season. We want to have a more concrete conversation around that. And so the reason, we're talking about this, obviously this is planning, so it's relevant to the planning board. One element of the scope of work is having a public board that is like a touch point for the consultants. They'll be obviously working with staff. They'll be out, in the community, hosting forums, and we'll do surveys and we'll do all that, that engagement stuff. But, having a public body to check in with, to take direction from, and, obviously the planning board, last week expressed, an interest in that, is always our intention to kind of shop this around to see who thought, they would be the most appropriate. So I think, if that is the planning board's, wish to be kind of the owner of this plan, as it were. Ultimately, this is coming out of the town administrator's office. Just like any other plan. I think the bike and pedestrian plan is the most recent example. This gets adopted formally by the select board or doesn't get adopted formally by the select board. But it ultimately goes to them. But in terms of, the board that kind of has their hand on the tiller, through this process, if the planning board wants it, it's theirs. So that's where we are. I sent around the proposal from MAPC, which should be in your materials. And I think the timeline on this is, we're in the middle of hammering out a contract with MAPC. And I think that we want to kick this process off probably in September, is when we would start to, formally kind of go out and meet with the planning board and, begin the public engagement process.
That's great, Tim. Thank you. And I do feel like I talked to Tim. One of my concerns that I had is that we don't want this to be confusing while we're doing, East Milton Overlay Zoning and we're having community forums for that we're not confusing people by having additional forums. And so I think it would be good for it to go through the planning board so we could be the point, of contact for people who have questions on this. Tim, I thought gave a really good explanation on how this would be different from the overlay zoning and the community forums being sort of on a higher level, sort of not as detailed as an overlay zoning would be, but more getting feedback in a more general way and just
and one thing I want to underscore about all of this, for everyone watching at home, that this is not a zoning effort. Recommendations from this plan may be the town should think about changing the zoning, and that'll be a step that we either take or don't take. But this is really about evaluating the town's kind of current economic development kind of environment, and gauging do we want more, do we want less, do we want different, and what policies can we pursue in the future to enact those. So it's one of the things that I think, relative to the East Milton process, which again is an MAPC project that they're helping us with. So there'll be, synergy there, but also those are after different things. And I think, to the extent that we are talking about, commercial development, mixed use development, different kind of land use aspects in East Milton, we may have a different conversation Milton through this economic development plan because we've already been doing so much work over there, relative to maybe other parts of town. But we're not talking about zoning yet.
Right.
We may never talk about zoning. I just want to make sure that people understand.
Yeah, I just want to be sensitive to that for residents because sometimes they're not clear with what is being asked of them when we do have a public forum. And so I think we can be clear with that. And I just also wanted to ask Tim, the cost is up to $99,000. Is it correct?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
99.
Will that be funded?
So the earmark, I forget what the exact figure of the earmark is. I think the earmark is somewhere between $125,000 and $140,000.
You froze for a sec.
So this will be entirely. Sorry, can you hear me?
Sorry, yeah. Now we can.
I wonder how many people are streaming downstairs. That's probably what it is. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
All of this will be funded through that state earmark. So no planning board budget, no select board budget, no master plan budget. This is all through that state earmark.
Okay. And so what would you, we would want to hear from the board, but what would you need from us this evening to move forward with that?
Can we have some comment first?
Yeah.
Before we go to what he needs to move forward with our board?
I want to hear that. Yeah, go ahead.
I thought this was going to be open for discussion.
You were just asking, right?
Yeah, I just was asking, but I
Okay.
definitely.
Because, in reading through this scope, and Tim had originally presented an opportunity for the Master Plan Implementation Committee to be the touchstone body, and I agreed, as you asked for us to wait until the board discussed it tonight. What I did say I was going to speak to the committee at a meeting, and we spoke last week. So I did want to convey that the committee feels that economic development is a major significant portion of the master plan. And we had a meeting dedicated to that discussion a few months ago, where we invited the members of the Chamber of Commerce and the business community in. And the committee, if this board wants to be the lead on it, the committee would like to have a role, and a clearly defined role, because we feel as if it's important beyond a planning effort. It's economic development, and tax base and so forth is a much larger topic than just zoning and planning. And so I do think it's really important also to think about these community focus groups, because, as Tim said, there are parts of town that have felt as if there's been no or little planning in their areas, and there are interests in certain things in their areas. And also, if there are changes that are contemplated, that they should be part of the conversation. So I think the design of these focus groups is critically important, like I was talking about just a few minutes ago, about the community engagement aspect of it. And Tim, one of the questions that I had about this scope on page 3 is where it talks about the focus groups. It says for each of the 4 priority business districts, yet elsewhere it talks about the possibility of, and you mentioned, like the pre-existing non-conforming business uses. And people have been interested in kind of local neighborhood retail so that they don't have to drive everywhere. And I just want to understand how that fits into this when the focus groups aren't necessarily, it hasn't been identified that other neighborhoods that don't have a business district, how do they participate in this if not in a focus group?
I mean, there are other, forms of outreach that are outlined in that scope. And I think, relative to the focus groups, I think, it's a fair enough point. We are, because the earmark is actually comes out of COVID money that turns into a pumpkin in a few weeks. We are very motivated to get this contract out the door. I think in our past dealings with MAPC, I think we've understood and are confident in their, flexibility in terms of not necessarily kind of doing things that are kind of way out of scope. But if it comes down to, we want to change the concept of these focus groups from existing business districts to, some type of other theme, I'm confident that that's something that we can work either through a formal amendment or, just kind of through the sort of ongoing work, of.
Yeah, I think that's important that we do reach some areas that have had interest.
Yeah, and so that's one of the points that I make, and going back to Tim years and years ago, and I actually talked at the time when the ice house was being contemplated, and one of the things that I came to the planning board and I spoke about all the pre-existing non-conforming businesses, and I reached out to every single business throughout the town. And we ran from obviously nurseries, landscapers, plumbers, cabinet makers. And so I think, to be honest with you, the focus really should be first to somehow solidify the pre-existing non-conforming. The businesses have been already existing part of the neighborhoods. And some of the businesses have been there for a very long time. So you wouldn't be really changing the fabric of the neighborhood. You would just be creating certainty for those business owners and property owners. So I was a little bit disappointed to not see the pre-existing non-conforming businesses being a priority. And I'm not, in some situations, there's room for expansion, and possibly in others, there's not room for expansion. But I think it would be good just to solidify and codify these businesses. So I would like to sort of, somehow see that. And that should really be, I think, a priority. We should prioritize the businesses that have been in town for a length of time before looking to see what new business opportunities can come in. And there are definitely opportunities for new businesses to come, and I'm not saying I don't want to encourage them to come, but I just think we should really focus on our pre-existing businesses.
I wanted to make another comment too. Tim, you mentioned, some discussion about diversification of tax base or increased commercial. People have suggested that we need to do that, but sometimes when it comes down to what that might look like, there's not necessarily the same energy around supporting it. So I do think it's important to analyze. So to say we might get let's say a $500,000 increase in business tax, this is the kind of use that would generate it. And this might be the other consequence with that kind of use, just so people understand, because we're going to probably, from what town meeting said, be looking at an override next year. And so as we're talking about I'm sure people will be talking about our tax base. And so if we're doing economic development analysis, I think it's important to have that conversation.
I think there's a data point on that particular topic that would be helpful to everybody. And Tim, I think you could probably ask Nick Milano for it. I think it'd be helpful for people to know how much of our tax revenue comes from the existing business tax base that we have.
It's very small, right?
I know, right? And my point is, this is I'm with you. I'm super interested in this and doing as much as we can. The 4 districts that are identified, it's great. Let's see what we can do everywhere. But I think it'd be really helpful for people to understand that X number of dollars comes from the existing businesses that are operating right now, so they can correlate how much more we might be able to accomplish. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
using the existing businesses as the definition of what dollars we're able to achieve, because I think there might be a notion that there's a really significant opportunity there in terms of tax dollars, and I can't tell you what it is, but I think it'd be a really good data point to have.
Well, I just want to mention that we did a little of that tax analysis in Milton Village.
Yeah.
And our business district there from business use generates very, very little tax. The largest one is extra space storage, which everyone says is a prime spot for redevelopment. And the others probably, in terms of business, is 2 Granite Ave.
Yeah.
But 88 Wharf generates a lot of tax. So I think it would be helpful in this conversation, if we're having this townwide conversation, to have that be a component of it, Tim. So like our business districts, we said that I think it was $500,000 in 2019 would, if it was a full build out based on the zoning that we passed, was going to be the potential for increased tax revenue through a mixed use. I mean, obviously, that's not fully business. And then if there were new business areas, where would they be? What kind of use? This is a really good conversation because it does crop up when we talk about our revenue.
Right. Great. So
this is good fodder for the kickoff meeting in September.
That's great, and I definitely would welcome MPIC to be involved as well. In all the meetings, all the forums.
Yeah, I think maybe once the kickoff meeting, we could participate in the kickoff meeting. People appreciate that, so they can see where good touch points or participation points would be.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be. I think this work will probably get rolled into our whatever recommendations we have about updating the plan. Probably at the end of next year now, or in the fall of next year. I think the group is interested in all the new initiatives that are happening between now and when we issue the report.
Mm-hmm. Tim, the proposal from MAPC is referred to as a draft proposal in our folder. is this, so I assume this is not the final one from MAPC, or?
I can't think of any substantive changes.
Okay.
I mean, it's draft only because we didn't finalize it and attach it to a contract when I put it in the folder.
Okay.
But there haven't been any substantive changes.
Okay, thank you.
Has there been a team assigned? Sorry, one more question. A team that would be assigned to this, Tim? Do we know?
We've had contact with one of the MAPC project managers. I don't know what the composition of the team would be yet.
How about the skill set or the expertise of the team members?
I'll have to get back to you on that when we get those.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it's a minor thing, but they reference the 4 districts that they identify as being on the east side of town. That's not really the truth, though, right? I mean, you don't consider Central the east side of town or Milton Village.
I mean, if you drew a line through Milton,
maybe
technically, I don't know, but I mean, it's a well taken point. I think it's kind of, you know, that description is kind of, you know, in opposition to there's no commercial districts on the west side. Everything is east of that, I guess, is how I would read that. But
okay, that's fine.
So, yeah.
Randolph Avenue is sort of the divider. So
so if they were looking at Randolph Ave, I would assume that they would probably look at Blue Hill Ave on 138. So that was my question. How come 138 wasn't put in this when they specifically identified 28? And so then the other thing is, you know, it says the plan will provide analysis on the 4 priority business. So I'm wondering if we could do a 5th, which is the pre-existing non-conforming.
So I think in terms of changing the proposal, I think we're a little bit beyond that because, like I said, we need you know, we're working on getting a contract signed with MAPC kind of as we speak. But again, you know, my experience with them, they are very interested in knowing more about what we want. You know, we've had conversations with them, kind of developing the scope. But also, there's been an understanding from the word go that the work would be informed by guidance and direction from, you know, whoever the public body that they engage with is. And so, you know, it's not in there right now, but I have every confidence in the world that when we have MAPC that, you know, we want to focus on non-conforming businesses that already exist. We want to take a look at 138. We want to look at, like, they will do that. And so, you know, like I said, when I say it's good fodder for the kickoff meeting, I mean it. You know, this is stuff that they want to hear from you all in order to give them guidance and direction in the broad framework of the proposal that they put together.
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right, so you'll get that taken care of, Tim, and
yeah, and I'll keep you all posted as we get a little bit closer to kickoff time. Yeah, so very much looking forward to this one.
Cool. Okay, great, thank you. So the next item on our agenda is discussion of Master Plan Implementation Committee vacancy. And I wasn't sure what had been happening with the Warren Lizio, and I know he's now stepping down, so there is a vacancy.
It has been a vacancy, and we hadn't thought much about filling it since the term was going to end in October of this year, but now with the town meeting vote of another year, we still hadn't thought of doing anything, but I had received an email from Lynn DiNapoli with an application and with a person who's interested. The person also listed a couple of other committees, so I reached out and I asked the person, you know, is this the committee that you would like to follow up with? And the person said yes. So all I did then was forward it to Tim and to Nick and say this application came in through the select board's office. And, you know, we have an opening, so we should consider it. And the appointing bodies, you know, for everyone who doesn't know, is the planning board and the select board. So, so that's all there is to the.
All right. So I just thought we would be able to let the public know that there is an opening, just so if anyone does want to apply, who's watching and interested.
I would say
and there's-
if the public that's watching is interested, to send an application in right
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
And then if there are more applications, I do not want to have the same process we had previously when we filled seats, that where we had multiple applicants. It wasn't, I think, something that most people would like to see repeated. So I think it would be helpful to, if there are more, then we would discuss how the decision would be made in advance, so that if the applicants or the interested parties want to come in and have an opportunity to speak. Because, some people felt like they were being spoken about in a way that they didn't have an opportunity to speak themselves. And I don't want that to be the situation again. So that's it. And the other thing is, because I will say, having been chair for a while and where we are so late in the game, I don't want it to take too long,
no.
because we're really trying to wrap up.
Yeah.
And we're trying to not, outside of, a role in this and a role in the library with the parking, we're really just looking to wrap up our recommendations and get any other updates that people have, like on the economic development.
And
so I don't want this to be a long
I
process.
agree. And so once, if there are any other applications that come in, we can evaluate those based on the criteria of the requirements and of a MPIC, Master Plan Implementation Committee member. What were
Can I just mention one?
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
I was just going to say, what were the qualifications of the person who just left? Because that might be a consideration when we're looking. Background.
Lauren Lizio, property management. Yeah. We expanded the list of qualifications at town meeting because we felt as if, as we looked at some, maybe the committee thinks the plan is actually more than just like planning, because there's things related to open space, things related to town facilities, and sustainability and so forth. So that's why we said if we're going to have more time, we wanted to have a broader opportunity for people to participate. We do have. If I think about, I'd have to think through everybody who's on the committee, what their skill sets are.
Yeah, so maybe we can put it on.
What we've done is we've kind of assigned people to tasks. So what I'll tell you is that Warren had been assigned the economic development task.
Okay.
And so that's something that I was going to take over for the time being. But if we get somebody in who can fill that spot. But, we've moved these things around. It's just a matter of we divvy up the work for the committee.
Great. So maybe, we can put it on the agenda for the next.
Oh, just the other thing is I
June.
just want to be clear too. I did get feedback before, like people who were being discussed didn't even know they were being discussed. And so because we weren't running the process as the MPIC, I felt as if I was putting in an awkward position as chair of the committee, that these people felt as if like the process wasn't clear to them, that they should have been notified, that they were being considered, they were going to be talked about, that they have opportunity to speak. So I'm just relaying that to you because that's feedback I received, and I think we just need to be very mindful as we think about filling this seat. There aren't too many, I don't know if there's any other that's a joint appointment. Which is just kind of an odd, I suppose, situation.
So it is kind of a strange process, and I think we should just maybe review what the process is in for other committees. I know this one's a little bit more unique, but what is the typical process? And maybe I just should call Nick Milano about that, and I could have that conversation offline. But just so the process is consistent, so when somebody fills out a form and they might put down, 3 committees, that the process is the same for each committee.
I think there's been a subcommittee on the select board that's working on that process. That was Aaron and Roxanne, my understanding. So,
but that's
I didn't hear anything from them.
That subcommittee is, I think, looking at getting rid of committees because there's 90 committees. And so I think that's different than right now when someone goes on and submits an application to join a committee. like, what is the process?
I can tell you before too, on the master plan, if I hadn't said it before, like we've had some people who don't continue on, and as the chair, I've just reached out to the select board's office because they keep the applications, and I say there's an open seat. Do you have any applications? Kind of just sort of waiting for it, and they send over what they have if they have. The last time was a unique situation because we had added the 2 new seats, and so I think in the past, it just came through as a formality to the 2 boards, like the person that applied, was accepted. It wasn't anything that went through kind of a rigorous process. So I think, that's more typical, I think. Some committees have open seats that not enough applicants or not enough people interested.
And it does sound like you're in the process of wrapping up your report and trying to get that finished. So
yeah, as I said,
we could help, fill that need.
If we have a writer, because writing a report, is something that everybody will be working on. But in any case, we're happy to take a little bit more time, but I just don't want to take a lot more time.
What is the
get more
deadline?
Applicants.
What is the deadline?
There is no deadline. People can submit applications anytime
No, to fill this position, you're saying we don't want to, we don't want to take too much more
see.
time. So what is it? Is it a week or 2 weeks?
Oh, no. Like, I would say, like, if somebody sees tonight and they want to submit an application, I'd like to have it filled in a month. We only meet monthly.
Oh, okay.
So if you have 2 or 3 months go by, that you're losing a third of the time we have left for this person. And honestly, it's a learning curve. You think about planning board being a learning curve, the master plan's a huge learning curve. And so you don't want somebody there that feels like they got caught up at the moment the committee's like sunsetting,
Great. Okay, good. Thank you. So we'll see if anything else comes in, because I know some people have said they were interested if there was a spot that opens. So, all right. So then now we're on to our old business, discussion of the East Milton Overlay Zoning and the next steps. And do we have Josh with us?
Oh, no, Josh isn't here tonight. I just wanted to kind of go through, because we need to schedule him to come in and kind of figure out when we're going to do that. So that was in his, I sent his email. Let me bring this up really quick. The last email that he sent.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I'll just share my screen real quick so everyone can see it. So basically, an update on the survey, which has been pretty good. Wants to come back in May to review community feedback and discuss any final revisions of the zoning recommendations, and then another June update to share final zoning. And then I think do we talk about another public forum? I mean, eventually we'll want to get out there, once there is draft zoning language, to kind of present that in a wider format. I don't know if he suggests that, but I think we should want to do that. But I think the goal here is to have, it doesn't have to be final, and in fact probably won't be final. I think Cheryl and anyone that was involved in Milton Village can attest. The language that was handed off, by MAPC was further worked upon. But we do want to have MAPC to sort of have, their final product for us to kind of work with, by the end of June, and then we can move on to design guidelines. But I just think, basically, does this kind of jibe with your kind of understanding of, let's get Josh in maybe for our next meeting in May, and then figure out a June meeting, and then, what do we do in between there?
Yeah, so we'd have them for the 23rd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be great. If you could come then. Do you want to check with him, or,
Yeah, I think let me double check, because I think I did.
23rd.
I think I did recommend to him to pencil in the 23rd. So I'll double check and confirm that, obviously, but
Great.
that would fit in with his timeline.
So Tim, for the 23rd, what can we expect that Josh will discuss with us or present to us?
So, sorry, let me bring that email back up. I apologize. So they've been kind of pouring through comments and commentary from the public forums, and also from the survey, which has been out kind of independent of those forums. So I think they'll want to present on the results of those. And then they'll have some zoning language recommendations for you to take a look at and provide feedback on. So, there are, stuff they're interpreting from public feedback, kind of crystallizing that into zoning language. And I think the next two touch points with the planning board will be to provide feedback on that.
So as those surveys come in, I think the email said there was 73 respondents to the survey, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as those surveys come in, he's interpreting what's in the survey and using it to try to formulate.
Yeah, and I think he'll present the latest and greatest in terms of those results to you all, and kind of again explain how they're looking at it and what they think it all means. I think that not having seen the survey results, I have seen comments and the discussion that we've had at the public forums. I think he's getting pretty clear direction from the public, which I think also you'll want to hear from the planning board obviously as well. But I think it's been a pretty I think I know the direction. I think we all kind of are starting to see where this is going. Although it'll be good to kind of see, what that looks like in kind of zoning form. And again, this is kind of I call it a finished product. It's finished in the sense that it's what, we will have asked MAPC to do, but it's up to the planning board to kind of take it, add, subtract, modify, whatever form you need to confidently get to town meeting. You can take that time to do that.
Okay. A resident, and you may have heard the same, you guys may have heard the same, but a resident, I remember they asked the respondent to define where they lived, their neighborhood. Were they East Milton or were they, somewhere else? One resident had said to me that this person lived on Governor's Road, and they considered the way you could answer that question didn't really address their neighborhood. Because although they're not in East Milton Square, they're immediate to East Milton Square, and just, for whatever value that has, there are people that are immediate to the square, like somebody, that could be outside the square, can't call themselves East Milton, but probably close enough that they fit a different category, and probably an important category if they're that close to East Milton. So that was a comment from a resident that lives on Governor's Road that felt that she'd like her neighborhood to be identified, for what it is, immediate to the square. So
Either that or do it by precinct, because precinct 7 is east of the highway, right? Precinct 8 and 6 are west of it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a little confusing now. Okay, that's great. So if you can just...
So yeah, we'll get Josh in for the next meeting.
Okay, great. That's exciting, moving forward with that. Okay, now we can move on to the MBTA communities zoning discussion. Should we have the scorecard first and then the survey? I'm thinking maybe we should start with the survey first, because that is something that we really want to make sure that we get out as soon as possible, so we can start soliciting input by the time we have our consultant on board.
So I had provided a draft on the 9th,
Yes.
I think, and then I revised it for
These are all yours.
on the 16th. So
Tim,
that's the most current one that I worked on, and I don't think I've seen anything come through since then that's different than that, but I think people have been looking at it. So Tim, can you bring that up on the screen?
And can you enlarge it? If possible?
Yeah, really large.
Cheryl, do you have any comments on the right side, or is that just all formatting, track changes stuff?
Let me just double check. It's just, yeah, that's all it is. So you don't have to show the comment. As long as we see that. I did the red line just so you could, people on the board could see what it was before, what was added. It was added based on our conversation. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 are new, but that was based on discussion at our meeting last time we spoke about this.
Is that the same?
Yeah.
This is the 16th, this is the 27th.
Here, did you all look through the, yeah.
I have it open on my screen.
Yeah, I can open it on my. I thought I gave it to you. So. Yeah, I'm gonna look at it here.
Yeah, I was glad to see, especially that you added what precinct, just, I thought that was really geographic information was helpful.
So we had just, again, so we had asked, how are you receiving the information to see if we should augment what we do, right? How effective
Tim,
I think this was useful information that Tim and Josh gathered on that topic before, how they received it. I think, Meredith, you mentioned that. And then the second thing was, I'm sorry, so that was the second. The first thing was if you'd like to receive updates, so you can put your email in, which was a good thing as well. And then the third was the precinct you live in. And then the fourth had to do just to make sure we were getting a good cross-section of our residents. I think we talked before about this kind of demographic information being anonymous. It was an idea, we want to make sure that we're getting feedback, as I just said, from a cross-section, not just race and precinct, but age. And just it's helpful to understand, if someone's newer to town or have been here longer, and if they have children or not.
Sorry, just back to the age. So over 65, I feel like there's a lot of people who are like 85. So do you think it should be like 65 to 75? Because I feel like 65, if you're 65, you may not be going to Council on Aging or in need of.
If you want to add another.
But I don't know if that's, maybe they're not taking the survey.
I think there's some value to that, though. I think, over 65 in today's world, there's a big
I'm
group over
almost there,
65. Huh?
Yeah, and then like again, I don't know if the correct age is 75 or maybe 80, but there's a lot of.
Since we've been doing it by decade here, I'd say do to, 66 to 75, and then over 75. If you want to add that.
That's fine.
I had a customer who came in the other day and she's 90 and she's still driving.
Wow.
Good for her.
It's great.
Living outside East Milton Square.
And then
That's wonderful.
I think we talked about just wanting to have an understanding if we're hearing from people who rent. Most of our housing stock is ownership, but not all. And we want to make sure we can hear from everyone, or as many as want to. I added these two because this gets to property owners as well, not just a resident. So I don't know if you think that these are valuable. Do you currently own property that you rent for residential use? And then do you currently own property that you lease for commercial or mixed use?
I liked those questions.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the type of housing you live in. Again, most of our housing stock is single family, but it would be good to know if we're hearing from people who are living in other type of housing stock. And then.
Give me just a half second, Cheryl.
Oh, sure. Sorry, I'm looking at my screen and not yours, Tim. So.
Yeah, I want to make sure I save this.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so then we're on number 14 now, the describing the commute to work. I mean, this sort of maybe could be how you get about, but because commute to work is a little different than it was pre-COVID.
Yeah, so that's what my question
Yeah.
was. So I commute to work.
You walk.
I actually drive my
Do you
car. But, you know, so I wasn't quite exactly sure about commute. I leave my house, so I work outside of my house.
I think then you would be, say, you drive a vehicle.
Yeah, I drive a vehicle. Okay.
No matter how far you're driving
Yeah,
it.
so that was
If you're
my
driving it to
question, how
Beverly
far?
like Sean, or you're driving it
Yeah. That was
down the
my
street,
question.
right?
Yeah.
I think the idea is to get some sense of whether, you know, we have folks here from certain precincts who are doing more, like if we see that people are in the transit area are taking the trolley more than people who are outside the transit area, right? I mean, I think it's just kind of a data point that we might find some interesting information.
When we say I'm not currently commuting, does that define I'm a remote worker? Or what is that?
Well, somebody might say that like if they're not commuting to work, maybe they don't have a job outside the home.
Yeah.
So they would just say they're not commuting because they're not going someplace on a regular basis.
Should there be another line that says I work from home?
Yeah, I'm just curious yeah.
If you think so.
I think that's interesting. It'd be an interesting point, you know?
So Tim, would that be a different question, or can that be, see in here?
It's an interesting question because then that leads us to another zoning question about home offices.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of people that are working remotely. I think we could just say, you know,
Or hybrid, about working, some people are hybrid.
Maybe both questions. Are you a full-time remote worker, or are you a hybrid? This is all anonymous.
Yeah, I think we could keep it here. We could say, I work from home.
Yeah, right under I'm not currently commuting.
Yeah.
I'm currently not commuting.
That's
remote.
That's the remote, yeah.
Maybe we could put /remote.
I work from home. Perfect.
Yeah.
That's why is there I'm sorry, I missed it. Is there a spot for, a question for street, not an address, but just what street do you live on?
Not
Was
street,
that in
just
there?
precinct.
Just precinct.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to know what street they live on, especially if they take the trolley or the bus. I mean, is that getting too personal?
You might
If it's
be able to track
anonymous.
people that way more.
Or just make it an optional question?
Tim, what do you think?
I mean, I worry that there are already a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So, Jim, I don't disagree, but also I think that, I mean, here's the honest truth. It's important for this data to be anonymous and for people to feel confident that they're not divulging private information. But ultimately, this is not going to, the folks at Pew or Harris Polling. This is me, and I'm not sitting here trying to like de-anonymize data. I don't have any desire or need to do that. But at the same time, I think more in terms of how many demographic-ish questions do we have to go through before we get to that? And Cheryl, this isn't a critique. It's just a matter of, we don't want to get after the same piece of information with two different questions. So I would say, let's pick one, either street or precinct.
Yeah.
And if I had to choose, I think, folks would probably be more comfortable just answering the precinct question than kind of saying, oh, I live on, because, there's, Canton Ave's a long street, and then,
Some streets are very short.
Cheever Ave is not so long.
I think also we shouldn't bother collecting data that we can't use. We could end up with an awful lot of data and it's just not useful. And I'm not critiquing the street thing, but I mean all of this data. There's a ton of data here. If it's not something we can use, we should peel it back, because a lot of people are going to look at this and say, "Oh my God,"
So my thought was, we want to hit the largest cross section we can, and if we're only getting information from a slice of Milton, then we need to do more outreach.
Yeah.
That's my thought behind the demographic data.
Yeah.
So if we're finding that we're getting very few people in the younger age bracket
Yeah.
or the older age bracket,
Yeah.
or living in precinct 1 versus precinct 7, because it'll skew what we
Yep.
hear. And so my thought is if we find that we're getting the majority of our input from one group, if you will, or some subsets of groups, we need to do more outreach. How are we going to get there? How are we going to get those folks to participate? And maybe we reach out to their town meeting members, or maybe we go to an event in a neighborhood association. Have one person can go with a flyer and say, we're going to hold this public forum, and go, everything I read about, community outreach is you got to go where people are. That can be hard to do, but maybe, what the water bill was, the idea that you had, I think you two had initially was to try and get something that goes to everybody's door. So that's the reason for the demographic data. If you think there's some of this that's not helpful to that, then, we could peel it back.
So the only thing to Jim's about the street, and I hear what you guys are saying, but there are certain precincts, which I think it's 6, for instance. Doesn't 6 go from like Adams Street, like almost to Milton Village, all the way, to East Milton? So there are some streets or some precincts are so big that it might be helpful to say what street you are, like in precinct 6. So, we don't know where they are, or like in precinct 2, maybe everybody responding is on Elliott Street, so they can walk to the trolley, but maybe there's a lot of people a little further away who might want to drive. I don't know. So I hear what you're saying about too much data, but, and maybe we're trying to do too much. But sometimes maybe you just put a line and say it's optional. I don't know. And all of these are optional, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you
so
can keep going.
You can
Yeah.
keep going. Okay. So I don't know.
So do we want to put a line in for
I don't know. It's
option
up to
street?
you guys. I don't feel strongly one way or the other. It's just,
Let's go through, why don't we go through the whole thing and then make that determination after we just sort of see how.
Okay, so
Much.
we were on,
Third.
I think now going to the district
13.
location characteristics and district locations and characteristics. So that was the last item under the demographic, I think.
Can I offer an opinion on? Can you go right to Tim? Just go up a little bit to the scale of 1 to 5. When a common way to respond that I think we see often is I strongly agree, I strongly disagree, I agree. When and I'm not criticizing least important, most important, but I think more commonly that expression of I agree, I strongly agree, and I can't tell you exactly how they all, to in lieu of least important, most important, I just think people are more accustomed to the agree responses.
Tim, do you ever thought about that?
I think in the end, they're getting after the same thing. I think in terms of helping people conceptualize, like, what they're reading and what they're answering, I think, and all of these questions, I think, can be very kind of simply reworded. But I do think Sean has a good point in that, how important is it to me to maximize the unit capacity within a half a mile is any of this stuff important to me? You can think of someone like, look at this. But if you're asking them, do you agree with this statement? The town should maximize the unit capacity within a half mile of transit. That puts them in a little bit of a box and says yeah, I do agree with that, or I don't really. So I do think it might actually be helpful to kind of phrase it that way.
So then I think you need one that would say unsure, because somebody might say, if it's so black and white, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gives you kind of a range to be
three.
gray.
You'd be 3. That's what you would pick. That's what I would.
John's giving
you'd be
3.
right in the
Yeah,
middle.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know if it's 3. I'd have to look at like a recent survey that I looked at, but I know
Oh,
strong.
no, I still would have the 1 through 5.
So I thought 5 was too many.
So
You
just
know,
so,
if I look at it, I'm like, I kind of just.
I don't, because I think sometimes you're a little bit
Yeah.
more, but you're not, you don't fully agree, but you're,
so just so you know
I think-
that this 1 through 5 and least important to most important came out of a survey that that I saw that was in a different community in a different state where they would look in a county survey on housing discussion. So I thought, I'm not making it up. I'm just taking it from somebody else who's done it. But if I like having a little bit of range, not strongly one way or another, because when I do some of these, I feel like I lean one way. I'm not strong one way, but I'm not undecided either.
Well, you could have 4, and I think 4 is not unusual in the agree spectrum. I strongly agree. I strongly disagree. I agree. I moderately agree. And then you have, it's
So you still have the 5.
4. Yeah.
But what if you have no opinion?
What?
3 is no opinion,
Pardon?
right?
You have no
there's no
opinion.
opinion.
or neutral or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
So I think you need the neutral because somebody might really not have a strong opinion about something. That's why I think you need 5, whether you rename it to
Strongly
agree and not
agree.
agree versus important or most important. I still think you need the 5.
Again, I don't
I
have.
do, I think so too.
Yeah, I think you need the 5,
Let
but I
me-
would
let me-
actually write out the words. Strongly
let me
disagree,
let me
disagree.
let me put something. Let me put something on the page.
Yeah.
Pete,
Yeah,
since you're a
exactly.
member of the public sitting here looking at this, do you
Yeah,
want to
chime
offer
in.
any comment? Sorry, Meredith.
No, that's fine.
Well, I think the idea of 3 being neutral makes sense. And then you should have an equal amount on both sides, so they feel strongly, don't feel as strongly, so I think 5 is good. But if it's worded like this, that could be there too.
I would do that. I would just switch them. I'd start with strongly disagree and go the other way. But I like that.
I like it being more positive to start with and working your way against something. Because I think if you put disagree, I think you're predisposing someone to what the question is.
I mean, you could say the same thing for if you switched it. Yeah, whatever.
Could you do where you've got your scale up above, 1 least important, 5 most important? Could you put the scale of 1 means strongly agree?
Yeah,
2
we would need
agree,
to
I'd like
change
that
that.
better.
and then just have the numbers below that?
I like it that way better because then it's not predisposing a question.
Yeah.
I think you end up getting lost in the numbers. By the time you're at the 9th question, you're just like checking numbers. At least that's me.
That's me too.
I like the way it's
Yeah.
written out.
Yeah, I just wouldn't have to go back and forth to the key. If I'm like,
Okay.
oh Jesus,
Right,
what was
exactly.
1? What
Yes.
was 1?
So then we should change on a scale of 1 to 5, rate the following 1, and then
You just lose the scale and just go with strongly
you
agree,
just-
agree,
you
neutral,
strongly
disagree.
disagree, strong.
You just lose
Yeah.
the scale that way. It's fine.
Actually, you strongly agree, and then strongly disagree. 5. Up top.
So
So
we
then
would
it would
just
be
we would just need to change all of these. Right? We strongly agree with this zone. Yeah, kind of that. Right.
So I want to be able to like walk away from like
Okay.
I can clean up things based on your guidance here, but I want to make sure that like we like each of these.
Okay.
It seems like it's possible. So like zoning should disperse the districts. Zoning should locate districts and areas with
Yeah.
These are all I had the town earlier, but I don't want to put the town on the hook. Let's talk about what the zoning should do or not do.
So Tim, before you scroll down, we wanted to change on the key what the definition is, from least important, most important.
Just strike that whole scale.
The whole scale just goes away.
You could just say just.
But yeah, or you don't.
There you go.
Yeah,
Just rate the
delete.
following.
Please rate the following, right, okay.
And then so it's not how important are the following to you.
Do you agree
So
with?
if you agree or disagree with the following statements.
Right.
And so I will reformat each of these questions to say, to be phrased in this way, that the zoning should do this. Because I think that's what they're all, include parcels, minimize new district locations. I mean, it's all,
So I'm sorry, Tim, to interrupt you, but I think if you could read them a little slower so people who are watching and might have a hard time
Yeah.
seeing, just so they can see what we're doing here or hear what we're doing here.
So, you know, I'll change the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. And then, you know, A will be zoning should maximize the unit capacity within a half a mile of trolley and commuter rail stations. B would be zoning should disperse the districts and unit capacity throughout the town. C would be zoning should locate districts and areas with public bus service when outside of a half a mile transit area. D would be zoning should consider whether the district contains roads with more than 2 lanes, sidewalks, and bike lanes when outside of the half mile transit area. E would be,
Tim, can we pause for a moment there?
yeah.
Can we just, I want to describe, I want to understand, make sure I understand, what does that mean? Roads with more than 2 lanes? Because every road, I guess every road, does it mean a 4-lane road? Because every road has, I think every road has 2 lanes, right? One in each direction. What do you?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, like Randolph Ave is a 4-lane road, right?
4-lane
Is
to
that,
me, yeah.
is that the, Reedsdale has,
Reedsdale, Randolph,
are those the only?
Granite Ave,
Granite.
The Parkway.
the Parkway.
I guess I'm just,
Parkway.
but is that what the reference is? Is it
trying
really
to-
mean 4 lanes?
Oh, not anymore.
Yeah,
They
you do.
shortened it.
Yeah.
That's
I
right.
guess
They
what I was-
narrowed it.
Yeah.
It could be something, I just think road width is kind of a factor. And people had concerns about whether some roads had the capacity to, you know, that a narrow 2-lane road wouldn't have the same capacity to add usage as a 4-lane would. And then another factor is, does a road have sidewalks and bike lanes? Because we want people to be able to walk and bike. So maybe it's 2 separate questions.
Yeah, I think it might need to be.
Okay.
Yeah. But that more than 2 lanes is referring to a 4-lane road, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know.
more
if-
because it's more than 2 lanes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could put a width, I guess, if we're concerned about a narrow road.
I don't think that.
I think-
But it's
Yeah.
more, if it's
Yeah.
greater than 2 lanes,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah, okay.
So that would be zoning should consider whether the district contains roads with more than 2 lanes. Zoning should consider whether the district,
roads have sidewalks and bike lanes.
roads have sidewalks and bike lanes. I'll clean all this up. But it'll all be constructed that way.
District.
And I guess, Tim, that D, Cheryl, outside the half-mile transit area should be in D as well?
Yeah,
right?
in both.
Yeah, okay.
Because the presumption within the half mile is you can get there, but I don't know if we need to add that to within the half mile, because that's in the law, I guess, is why I put that distinction in.
Yeah. So
Thinking of you, Maggie.
So that same end on E, Tim, would be outside of the half-mile transit area. We would put that at the end of D as well.
Correct, yeah.
So F, how do we want to say F?
So here I would say
With existing?
zoning districts should include
So-
parcels with.
Here I'm wondering, so with a historic building, I've seen it where developers have developed a parcel of the property, but they've just kept the facade. So when you look at it, it looks like the same building. Then around the back it's different, or they've altered it on the inside. Are we making historic buildings completely untouchable?
Wait, we're not quite to that one yet, Jim, because of the renumbering here. We're on the multifamily commercial
Yeah,
mixed use.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that one was the notion that we want to zone areas that we already have, not just the zoning for, but the actual built, right? So, that was one of the
Existing,
criteria.
I just would say
yeah.
existing multifamily housing, commercial, mixed use.
You can put it, you can
Include
add the word
parcels
existing. yeah.
Existing.
I would say,
Oh.
yeah, that's fine.
I wonder if a word might be helpful here. I was going to suggest the word favor. Zoning should favor parcels, right? Is that what you're getting at? Because when you say minimize, I'm not trying to mix.
Sorry, you were jumping to the next.
I know I am, but I am talking about the one you're on right now.
yeah.
But isn't that
You could
the
say
idea?
should
Here we wanted to include the areas like 88 Wharf and Unquity House where we already had multifamily.
Or
That was the
commercial,
idea about
say
this,
storage.
so that it becomes a criteria. I'm trying to take some of the things that we had agreed to before and put them into this so that people can weigh in on those.
Okay. So maybe my thought on E is probably not appropriate.
I don't want to sound too arrogant, but aren't we going to do that regardless of what the survey comes back at? Aren't we going to use our existing?
I think
So
we
that goes to
need.
the too many questions issue.
Well, that'll go in with the criteria. So back to the criteria.
I think one thing here is that some people might say, no, we should be zoning new. It was something that we said, but should somebody else get to decide something or give us that they don't agree with that input, right? So it's.
I think it's valuable to recognize whether people agree with that
Exactly.
approach or disagree with it, True. Yeah, so understand your point, but
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
And there are examples of commercial, like 2 Granite, which are already existing commercial, but it could be zoned, it could have a new use,
Right,
That's
exactly.
what we're
Gotcha.
hoping to have existing buildings that are reused and reutilized and
Okay.
find a new.
I actually like your word favor on that one. Zoning should favor parcels.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you.
No, I just think that,
That's good, because that's not so definitive, yeah. I do.
The favor, yeah.
I like that too. All
Yeah,
right.
that's good. Sorry.
It's okay.
So I have a thought here.
not to be
and
disagreed.
it's and maybe it throws a little bit of cold water on favor because
We don't favor your
Yeah.
comment.
or maybe it doesn't. These 2 questions, F needs the next F needs to be reformatted, but F and then the one about single family parcels are kind of, I think, not mutually exclusive. Someone could answer the same for both of them, but I think what we're getting after is, I guess my question is, should the positive language also be in the next one?
Yeah,
So zoning
definitely.
should favor parcels with existing multifamily. Zoning should favor new district locations that have existing single-family parcels.
Yeah, exactly.
And-
Yeah, Tim, exactly. When I started talking about favor, I was thinking of applying it to both of them because minimize was confusing to me.
Right.
I just thought favor better described what we were asking the respondent to respond to. So that was it. Yeah.
And we should get opposite answers to both of these questions from the same serve. Or maybe we won't. Maybe someone's just like zone everything.
That's a reason, but that's a reasonable expectation. If you favor one, you might not favor the other, right?
No, one of the things, the thoughts behind this was I think a lot of people didn't really understand when they were saying, well, why isn't more of this in the transit area? And it's like, well, there's, a lot of single family homes in that area.
Yeah.
And are you actually suggesting that those should all become something else?
Yeah.
And, and if they are, they should answer this that way.
Right.
But, for the people whose homes are in that neighborhood, they might answer that differently.
Yeah, some could prefer it everywhere and anywhere.
So, yeah. All right. I think one of the other things too is there's a lot of misunderstanding about what it really means, because some people might read this and say, okay, I don't want a 4-story big building here, but if they said, maybe I could take a 3-unit kind of house-looking building here, and we haven't really delved into the distinction in this. So, and maybe that's something that might influence how somebody answers these questions.
Yeah, I mean, if they had a good understanding of the design guidelines, they'd be better able to answer that, because the design guidelines may comfort them to be able to say, yes, they favor it in a, single family residential area.
So maybe this one should say, should we sort of qualify it?
Yeah, based on design guidelines, based on however we want to reference the design guidelines. That's probably applicable for F, but not for E.
So the way I think about this, and not that we would necessarily want to have, a ton of surveys out there, I think that because we don't know what design guidelines would look like.
Right.
We don't know when we'll have them, and we can reasonably expect, depending on what the results of this question are, maybe there's a follow-up question either in this survey, or I probably favor a follow-up survey or a follow-up kind of discussion. Hey, we heard that you don't want to have new district locations where there's existing single-family parcels. Would you be okay if there were design guidelines?
Yeah.
Or if it was capped at 3 units a parcel like it was in the guidelines before, in the prior zoning. I think that would make a big difference in how someone might view it. But I think it's fine to wait to parse that out a little bit further. But I don't want to forget about it.
We've got very simple, direct questions that are going to give nice, clear feedback right now.
Yeah, if they get too complex, they're just not going to be able to answer them, or their answer might not be of value.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Pete.
It's good you're discussing this stuff.
Yeah, we're going to get it out. Yes, good.
So then this should be the same thing, favor new district, the historic one, right? If we're following what we did up above.
Mm-hmm.
Favor?
Well, we really don't want that, but it's phrased the same way.
I know.
But we just did it on the single family. So here you would have to have someone say no, they strongly disagree with. That's
to see if they're paying attention. Well, actually, you never know. Maybe somebody doesn't have respect for
single
historical.
family, though, right?
In the commercial.
I don't know. I heard a lot of people that would, even with the smaller, what is it? The statewide. I'm drawing a blank.
ADU.
Thank you. People were very favorable to that. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, I would do that. I wouldn't think twice about doing that. And that's taking a single and turning it into a multi.
Sort of.
So I think the favor on the former question is okay, but here I think it skews you.
I do too. I feel like that's
against historic properties.
I feel like people who live in the transit area in the single family in 2 families, wouldn't necessarily want something that looks like you're targeting their area in a question. So I kind
Yeah.
of feel like the way it's phrased in the, in F is kind of that way. But if, I think it's okay if we keep G the same, but if we change G, then I'm uncomfortable with the language in F.
I'm almost thinking we should change, F back to minimize and G to minimize.
Or not favor.
Or not, yeah. Or
Yeah, I took it as E and F are kind of playing, commercial versus single. G is its own thing. That's the way I saw it. Multis, I'm sorry, not commercial, multis versus singles, and then G as, how do you feel about historic properties? So you could get away with keeping the word minimizing
But see,
G.
now I think though,
then that
now
sounds-
what you're doing is the only one that you've kind of skewed is the single family, which I don't think is right.
If you said on this particular one, the others, zoning should include district locations that have, could you just say that? Would that achieve what we're trying to say?
Which one?
This one right here, G. This is on district locations that have structures of historic significance. Zoning should include?
All right, so we should, well, if we change it to should include, maybe we do should include on all of them.
Yeah. Jim, what were you saying about favor for this one? Is it something about it that didn't work here?
It just didn't sound, it sounds like
It's the opposite of what we
want
really
to destroy
want. But
historic
that's
properties.
my
is the
problem
way
with
it thinks.
having it on
And I
the
would
single
strongly
family
disagree
too.
with
So
that.
maybe minimize, we go back to the
That's
minimize.
that's what that leads me to think.
I don't
Maybe
know.
we
I
go
don't
back
know
to
that.
minimize, because it's,
Okay.
should we go back to minimize on all three and keep them consistent?
I mean, I don't know that they have to be consistent. I don't have to be. I think they just have to. They have to ask the question in a way that somebody can understand it. And I understand that the historic one, it might not be the appropriate phrase or word.
So I think if
Maybe
we're
F and G.
changing that one, we should change the one before it. Because
Yeah,
when
I
we
think-
say favor on the multi, that's in the positive because that's what we favor. If we say the same kind of thing on the historic that we don't favor it, then why are we favoring single family here?
Maybe
I would
just-
say
It's
minimum,
inconsistent approach in my opinion.
should not favor new district, then F should not favor, and then G should not favor.
Yeah. It would be consistent that way, I think.
Favor, not favor. Not favor.
Does that sound good to everybody on those?
Yeah.
And then hopefully that's not too confusing.
We're going to give the
now
same
you would-
treatment to these.
No, if we
So
go
which
to
of the
strongly
following
agree.
physical characteristics do you agree with? Or how strongly do you agree with?
Well, I mean, it would be the same question, like, do you agree or disagree with the
Okay.
following
Yeah.
statements? And then we would need to,
Okay, all right, fine.
Right.
Mhm.
I'd love to get in the word existing in 16A. Those that are found.
That's what that are found, but it's intended to be. You could say that exists.
That exist, yeah.
I like it that exist.
To those that exist in the immediate area.
And Tim, do all of these start with zoning should limit? Is
Yeah.
that- yeah.
Well, I don't know if this needs an explanation of what minimum allowed means, but minimum allowed, do you think that needs any explanation?
I would maybe say something like, the state defines multifamily housing as 3 or more units.
Okay, so you can change that. What's in the parentheses to that?
I wouldn't say require. I'd say allow.
They won't do, some people won't do it. If you allow big buildings, it's going
Well,
to
I
be.
mean, I'm sorry, for D?
Yeah,
D.
on the
Multiple
multiple
buildings
buildings.
on
The
larger
idea is
parcels.
you want it to break the scale down, you need multiple buildings, in my opinion. But people are very concerned about the scale of buildings.
Oh, no, just when I read it, reading the word require makes me strongly disagree. I don't know, just
Oh, I see.
a psychology thing.
Allow would give the option.
Right,
So
which
like
is
if you had extra space storage, if you had a large, development, you might want that to be a single building there at that location versus.
They have the two small ones there too.
They do. Yeah, no, I think that's fine then. I can leave that.
It's not like defining, I mean,
Right.
like the zoning will figure out what that means. It's just an idea about trying to get people to, I mean, they're going to tell us they don't want big boxy buildings, is basically what they're going to tell us. Because
that-
that's
is
what
that-
everyone
Yeah.
tells us.
Is that what that word is, boxy? I
Yeah,
can't see
it's
that.
boxy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
If you think about what
that's good.
people were worried about with Granite Ave, it's
Yeah.
big boxy buildings.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, amongst other things, but
Right.
this point I'm referring to.
Yeah, yeah.
You can turn the TV now that no one's here, right? Can you not see it? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's-
No, I can't see it because of my age.
You'd have to bring it all the way up, Jim.
Oh, Jim, that's perfect. That's unbelievable. That's great. I hope some year we can have 2 screens in here, one for those that come and one for the board. This idea of trying to share one screen is really difficult.
Yeah, that's why I bring that.
I know. I do the
I remember
same.
when the screen was used
Yeah,
and Alex would sit,
Yeah.
the old days.
yes. So E, ensure cohesive design, that's good.
Thanks, Joe.
Where did we land on require multiple buildings or allow multiple buildings? Did we do anything there?
No, I'm not hung up on it.
I think we'll leave it.
I just think we were going to see how strongly people feel about that as a requirement. So is there anything else that anybody thinks is needed under that?
No.
The locations and characteristics?
I'd like to see that you formatted it in French too, Tim. On the side.
What is that?
That must have been my
Oh,
keyboard.
is it you?
Ooh la la, yeah, sorry.
I have, I'm taking French classes, right? So I have the
going.
dual keyboards.
Yeah, my wife did Rosetta Stone. It worked. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't notice that. All right.
I think we have to be consistent, say strongly agree. Least important, most important. Didn't we change that?
Yeah,
at
you'll change
top?
the scale on all these, right, Tim?
So now,
Eventually?
well, here though, on this one, we want to ask, okay,
The benefits most important. I guess that's fine, yeah.
yeah, I think.
Yeah, I actually think these questions lend themselves a little bit more to this is really important to me, this is not so important to me.
Right.
But maybe we want to do the scale very important, somewhat important, neutral,
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
not important, really not important.
right.
No, that's fine.
Oh, no,
Least
most important, important, neutral, less important, least important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Or no,
Somewhat
yeah.
important. Yeah.
We'll figure it out. I'll
Okay,
make,
I like
let me
that.
make a note here.
Okay.
And just D, it should be reducing, not just reduce. Reducing Milton's negative impact on the
true.
environment.
Mm-hmm.
And just in E, everything else starts with, increasing,
Right.
increasing. So E just should start the same.
You could say increasing Milton's contribution to solving, I guess.
Or just
I know.
I think just saying
Contributing.
contributing to solving the region's housing challenges, that's
Contributing is
either
enough?
important or
Okay.
not important.
Yeah.
Okay.
But on F, are we really diversifying the tax base? It's still residential. So I understand increasing the tax revenue.
One thing is if we did mixed use, like where we don't have it now, like I think was contemplated, we had more mixed use that was allowed, and that would diversify it a little bit more.
But primarily MBTA zoning is housing, not commercial.
The zoning can be mixed use though.
I think
So-
it's fine because it could be a commercial that's becoming mixed use. Yeah. I think that's good.
Do we think that anybody would not agree with increasing the vitality of our community? Is that actually, yeah, I mean, is this a test?
There might be some people who
Is,
don't want.
is there anybody in town that would like a less vital community?
I
Are you
guess
going back to the too many questions thing?
There are people who just want open space, more tranquil, not
Me.
not.
That's what Vermont is for.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, there are people who I know. Promoting.
Yeah, but that's different than vitality. Vitality is, even if you have a tranquil town, you still want it to be a vital town,
No, I think that's good. That's us. Yeah.
Where are we?
Promoting.
H.
Increasing neighborhood retail options.
so. Again, that's where this might be interesting if some precincts come in really high on that and some come in not high on that, because some already have retail and some don't. So it'll be interesting to see how that gets answered.
I think I is a valuable one. Promoting public transit ridership and non-automobile rideshare. I think that's valuable. I think you want to know how strongly people feel about that.
Yeah.
Because that will help us it'll help us shape it. Yeah. And describe what increasing property rights opportunities, what is this getting at?
Right now, almost anywhere, the only thing you can do is a single family home. So even, so if somebody had a pretty large lot, but it didn't lend itself to subdivision because it couldn't meet frontage or whatever other subdivision requirements were, but if they wanted to add a unit or two so that they felt like their kids could live there, or, maybe they're on a fixed income later, that kind of your idea, that it gives them a little more that they can do with their property than they can otherwise. So is that important to somebody?
Can we expand upon that so they understand that? I'm not sure everybody will understand that. I mean, when I think about the entire town, increasing property rights opportunities, I'm not sure that people will break that down the way that you just broke it down,
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions? Or Tim, do you have any suggestions how to capture that?
And how many, what percentage of the town would be affected by that? Because you would need a larger piece of property.
I guess it really kind of, somebody might just want to be able to take their single and turn it into a 2.
Right.
But this zoning wouldn't be able to do that unless they did a 3, right?
Well, unless we lower our 7,500 square foot minimum.
Except that the way the law works.
Maybe this would be interesting. I mean, I think it would be along the same lines. Could this question be phrased in a way just to ask somebody if they would have an interest in having their property?
It's not about selling their property, it's about doing something themselves with their property, right?
Yeah.
So
But somebody, I guess where I was going is somebody may prefer to be within the zoning so they could do that.
right.
Yeah, I mean, might we
exactly
just ask that question?
Because that's what Tim had in the original survey.
Yeah, we had a question like that in the original survey. It was just straight up.
Would you develop
yes
your
or no.
property?
Yeah.
Would you be
interested in
developing your property?
I'm just thinking, when you think about this, not everybody has your background and would understand that question. And I think if that's what we're trying to get at, would you want to enhance your property? Tim, I don't know. I'm not coming up with the right phrasing.
I think develop.
Well, you could say increasing property rights opportunities through development of your property.
To multifamily housing.
Yeah, to multifamily housing. Yeah.
I kind of wonder if having the standalone question,
The question
without
you had
kind of
before.
putting it,
That's
putting it in
fine.
the
Put it
framework
back
of.
in.
Just put direct, be direct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Less words, direct.
Yeah, I think that just, if people
Fine.
understand.
Yeah, that's fine.
As for K, are we on K or are we? Yeah. I don't see a benefit to having this at this point. I mean, this is going to the Supreme Judicial Court. Whether, what is the benefit of asking this question at this point?
I guess one thing would be some people, right, what the court.
Yeah, because
What if the court tells us, what happens if the court tells us to do the zoning, we don't do it? I don't know
Well,
what
we're
the
gonna
legal
do it.
consequence of that is, but, we
We're
still have to
gonna
go to town meeting and do it. We say we're going to do it, but town meeting still has to take a vote, right?
Yeah.
No, we
So-
don't necessarily have to.
I don't really know what the, consequence of that would be, like.
And I would think that the referendum answered that question,
Answered what?
following state law.
I mean, right now, the question is, what is the law? Is it a law, right? I mean, it's just, so many of the questions here, I think, really help us understand how we, I don't think that helps a zone. You know what I mean? Everything
Right.
here that we've done is to help us create zoning that the residents feel is appropriate. I don't see how that contributes to doing that.
And it's under the section what says, how important are the following benefits?
Well, some people see, grant funding, maintaining grant funding as a benefit, right? So maybe what you could just say here is maintaining grant funding, state grant funding opportunities. You don't have to say state law.
But I think what John's saying is it's confusing because we're talking about how we're going to zone and what we're going to proactively do. This is almost a different question if we weren't doing zoning.
Yeah.
Or if we were considering whether we're doing zoning. This makes it look like we're
I think
maybe
it shakes
considering
people up.
it
It just gets
or
people
not.
kind of upset or
Yeah.
Yeah.
emotional.
It looks yeah, like we might not be doing zoning, and I just wouldn't want them to think that. So.
But is it clear to all of us that the zoning that we're going to submit for town meeting is going to comply with whatever the court comes back with? Like if the court comes back with that we have to follow as a rapid transit community, are we committing that's what we're doing?
Unless we want to go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Well, we're at the state Supreme Court already, right? So
It's just one more level.
I just think it's that kind of.
No, I think, yeah.
It goes to the intent of what the zoning is going to do. Is it going to follow the law? The law meaning whatever the court comes back with. So I guess you could say following, state law as interpreted by the court or as decided by the court.
I honestly feel like we should keep this focused on helping us so that we can shape the zoning. At the end of the day, we're going to create the zoning. The select board is going to decide what they do with it, right? I mean, they're the ones that are going to have to decide. They're the executive body in town, not us.
Yeah, but we would submit it to them. I can't imagine they wouldn't put it on the warrant and let the town meeting decide. But
I assume you're right too. Yeah, I assume.
I mean, the legislative body should really decide.
Yeah.
It would be our responsibility to submit it.
Yeah,
I'm fine if you want to strike it out.
I think everything.
I just think it's an important question at some point to be discussing when we get closer to what the court is going to, tell us.
Yeah, so I just strike it.
Should this be strongly agree?
Yeah, I think we go back to strongly agree on the.
Yeah, this one might be.
And these I don't think need to be as edited.
Yeah.
I mean, these really just came out of all the discussion. And some of it, it's important to see how well people understand some of it. And to address whatever might be something that rises to a really high level of concern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tim, or maybe you're not ready on, are you, I just want to see the last couple. I wonder if we should break H into two. Multifamily zoning will lead to demolition of historic homes and structures, and maybe a separate one for multifamily zoning will lead to demolition of existing. Is it worth separating that? So
the historic, you mean?
Yeah, breaking historic out so people can answer that on its own.
I was thinking that too. But I would, it might be.
So that's the interesting thing is without having the historic districts, like we had this conversation before, what's historic? Is it because it was built in a certain time period, or is it because it's a high style? Some people's homes, they were built a long time ago. I mean, I've actually been looking at some interesting properties and find that they were built in 1800s.
Yeah.
And you look at them, and you might not know that they were built in the 1800s because they're very simple, but they might have been simple worker housing.
Yeah.
And that's historic, in its own way, as different than a high-level Georgian or something.
And that would be defined as the Historic Commission looks at it, that it could be a cultural resource, it could be a period of that type of historic home.
Mm-hmm.
So I think here my thought was it's just people are concerned about demolition
Okay.
in a broad sense.
Okay.
And most of our housing stock is
That's what I was getting at, right.
historic. A lot of it's
It's
historic.
because the definition some people can only think of as something that's like high level, looks like an estate, but there's a lot of other really interesting historic
And it's viewed in
patterns.
town as 75 years or older, and that includes a lot
Yeah.
of the housing stock.
And my mid-century modern 1950s house is included.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my 69 house is not, and I wish it were, because I'm dying to tear the thing
Historic
down.
New
Just look
England,
at
preserve that mid-century
What do you want?
modern.
What do you want to know?
We
my own
kept
house.
the light
I just
fixtures.
look at it, I'm like, God, this thing's, anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The Gropius house
that.
and, yeah.
I just, I guess I have this thought that a lot of people consider historic homes not like you just described. They consider historic the ones with the plaque on the front.
I know.
That's so. As long as you feel we're going to get the right answer, or the answer that's worthwhile. But
I guess I'm really thinking that mostly how much do people fear demolition?
yeah,
And
Yeah.
on the one hand, an existing structure that's, maybe not of the best quality.
yeah.
We don't care so much about, but so it could be fine if you want to. I just don't want it to only be historic
Yeah.
because demolition in and of itself,
Is changing the character
yeah,
of
it's
the town.
changing.
Yeah.
I agree.
Unless we somehow
would we
write-
put an error in? Would we say multifamily zone will lead to demolition of homes built after, 1880 or I don't know. I don't care how we word it. I just want to make sure that we get a satisfactory. People have the understanding of the question, so we get a response that's valuable.
Well, yeah, because what I'm trying to do is not prejudice that only certain kinds of older homes are important, and we don't care about other kinds of older homes.
Yeah.
Ones that are smaller on smaller lots are
Okay.
not as important as ones that are bigger on bigger lots.
Yeah.
Great.
Because,
Yeah, you look
Yeah.
at what's happened on Hillside, Street. There's a lot of really,
yep.
sweet,
Because
small
obviously, the thought, at least I think, in certain areas is that you keep them and you can add on to it, or you can add another structure and keep the one you've got if you've got enough land. Some things, like if you look at maybe Unquity House, you don't mind a demolition if they put something else back. Maybe that architectural style was not as attractive to some people. But still, there's a lot of embedded carbon and everything else, and so maybe they just dress it up. But how important is that to somebody is really what we're trying to get at, right?
Yes. Yep. Okay.
And of course, the last one is pretty vague, but it's something that you hear.
Yep.
And then I think if you get a lot of strong response to something like the last one, we need to tease that out further. What does that really mean?
Because there are a lot of pretty two-families in town.
Yeah, beautiful.
There are.
Absolutely beautiful.
There are.
And there's even a handful of, like a 4, a 7,
Yes, yeah.
you know.
Look at Borough State.
Yeah. In fact, there's something off of Thatcher that's like a cottage style. There's like 4, right?
Yes, yes.
And I was
one of my
like,
favorites.
yeah, I was like curious. I said, I gotta walk by there. I'm like, wait, where am I? But
so cute. I
there's anyway. So a small home on a small parcel. Those are good examples.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it on the survey.
That's
Are we
great.
missing anything you think?
So do we clean this up and review it, or just Tim gets it online?
Tim, will you? Yeah. Do you want to
So
go in and just sort of send us a revised copy for a final review?
But
And
we
it would
don't
give us
have to wait till a meeting to do
No,
that.
Yeah.
I'm fine
No,
with them
that's
going with
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
would-
here's what I'll say. I'll clean it up, and if I'll send it to everybody, but if Meredith tells me not to post it, I won't post it. But I'm gonna assume that if everything is okay with the chair, that
Yeah.
we'll be good to go after I clean it up.
And if anybody
is there a
sees
way to
anything-
get it on, like a pop-up box on our first page of our Town of Milton website? Because you got to go to like departments and then planning
So we
department.
will-
It's cumbersome to get to the survey.
So we'll send it out as a news item, and then that gets sent out to anyone that is subscribed to news updates on the town website, which is a decent amount of people. I don't know if it can be like pinned to the homepage. It can be a featured item on that news page, so that even if like other items kind of bump it down the list, it's still kind of pinned to the top of the news page. And then we can also format, the planning board and department pages. Highlighting it on the town homepage itself, we tend to save that for like emergencies, frankly, or like breaking news things that are of, town-wide kind of imminent importance. But we'll talk to the town administrator about that, and any way that we can kind of keep this, as front and center in the most number of places, we'll do.
Tim, when you're having that discussion, I am in that email list where I get every email. Could you ask how many people are recipients?
Right.
How do you know that answer?
I don't, but it's knowable. So
yeah, that'd be. I mean, that's a great way to get it out there. Using that email list. But I don't know if that's 2,000 people or 10,000 people.
And can't you choose when you sign up? You can choose what department you want to get it from. So I wonder how many people are for the planning department. This would be on the planning department.
No, we would do it as like a town news item, like, the new survey, please take it. So that would go out to anyone, the most general subscription that is available. And then, if we put it up on I actually don't know what updates of the planning board or the department page actually go out as an alert. We don't tend to put like news items on that. So I don't know if that's like automatically, like anytime the page is updated, it's going out. But for things like this, we'll use, we'll use the town news, page, and then obviously all the social media feeds. And this is something that is grabbing everyone's attention. So I'm sure, the Times will pick it up and Milton Scene will pick it up. So, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's hard to know when you're taking a pause. I just wanted to ask if you could ask Mr. Milano if the select board can make an announcement at their meeting, because a lot of people watch their meetings.
Right.
And then even whether the Council on Aging can put it in their newsletter and the library put it in their newsletter, because that might get more people than just, I'm not subscribed to the town one. I get too many emails already.
And Council on Aging, I was thinking we might want to have hard copies. Tim, at
Good
Council
idea.
on Aging, hard
And the
copies
library.
in the library that we could leave stacks.
And actually, I wonder if we should see whether we can put it at the high school or at the colleges. I'm just kind of thinking, how do we get like some of
Or
the
in
younger
everybody's
folks?
tax bill, a little blurb.
This
Great to do
might
that.
sound it may not sound sensible, but when it's time to vote, we have the those stand-up signs that are spread around the town to remind people that voting day.
The sandwich
Could we
boards.
use those message boards just to please fill out the MBTA zoning survey. It might prompt people to.
Does the select board have to approve
And
those?
what about the fake signs? I know, like when the electric signs, when it says it's Celebrate Milton or
Vote.
Oh, yeah.
vote, like,
Or road closed. Yeah.
Yeah. What about that? I think.
There's a banner sign set up here at Town Hall.
Yeah, but they always, I thought they used to have one on, like, over by St. Elizabeth's, even, fireworks, June 22nd.
I think, Maggie, I love that idea. I don't know if there's enough bulbs to give people an indication of what they're looking at, Take survey, go to town website.
But the events
Right.
up at Hutchinson's Field.
I like where your head's
have
at,
them
but we got to figure out a different way, I think.
want
But I think I like the sandwich board idea. We've talked about that for other potential projects. I think it's probably doable, just a matter of logistics, frankly. So we'll talk about that as well.
Okay, thank you.
You can put the QR code on it.
I like the sandwich board. They like the farmers market has the Milton Players and others, right? Have the sandwich boards.
Yeah, the
We
QR
do,
code's a home run.
we do 4 of them for the Scout Wreath Sale, and I put them up 2 weeks before, and they're super effective.
Do we have a volunteer?
I would do it.
All right, Tim,
100%.
look.
I mean, I'm not going to make them, but I'll put them out and I'll retrieve them. And I'll make sure they don't get blown down by the wind, like I do.
Perennial sale,
Yeah.
Garden Club perennial sale. Put a plug in for this Saturday, 8
Oh, is
a.m.
it?
at the library.
Yeah, excellent.
But the sandwich boards are all around.
Yeah.
So they would fill, I just want to make sure I ask this question. They would fill this out electronically, right? That's the way they're going to fill it out. And
Or paper like they did before too.
Or
is that
paper
right?
option
Okay.
for-
Okay. So we'll make that option available because some people might prefer.
Especially seniors
Yeah.
who aren't
Yeah, definitely.
computer savvy.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're filling it out electronically, and you get halfway through it, you can come back to it, right?
Is that how it works, Tim? I don't recall.
I'll have to look and see what we did for the last one. I tend to think that, well, I'll flag that as an issue. And if it's something that we're capable of, we'll try to do it. And if not, we'll just make that clear that, you got to do it in one session.
Okay. I raise it because there are a lot of questions and somebody could get interrupted and we don't want to lose them if we don't have to.
Yeah, and what we can probably do also is put like a little bit of kind of like disclaimer language, like, this should take 5 to 10 minutes.
And you could also, can you put that you don't have to answer all the questions?
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Because sometimes, like I've done these where you have to answer before you move to the next one.
Right. So if I was going to refer somebody to it, like if I'm working in somebody's house and I say, hey, go take our survey about the MBTA zoning, they would go to the Milton page, then departments, then planning and community development, and then somewhere on that page it would come up?
Yeah, I mean, I'll see what the exact kind of formatting is to kind of pin it to the top of both the planning board and the planning department page. Whether there's a widget that I can put up on those websites. But we do want to send people. I mean, there's going to come a time where other things need to be on the front page of the town website. But I think if we can point people directly, to planning board or planning department, it'll be open as soon as they open that page.
Okay.
And just as a note, because Jim's got it open.
Oh, sorry.
I think the planning and community development landing page needs a better photo.
The little guy?
Looks like it's a DPW landing page.
That should say, take our survey.
And will that go, I'm sorry, I don't have it open. The Facebook page also, the town's Facebook page?
Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, that
doesn't say anything
Right?
about
Take our MBTA
all
survey.
of Tim's hard work.
Right?
I know.
And if we can all share in our networks when it's on the Facebook, the town's Facebook page, or the email blast that goes out, if we can share that and ask that everybody share it. If you're part of a neighborhood association, if they can blast it out. I think it's really incumbent upon all of us to try and, Maggie, you've got a network there, right? A public network there.
Definitely.
Because it's only going to be as useful as to us as if we get a lot of people to
I mean,
respond.
I could print them out. Would it be appropriate if I printed it out and handed them out?
Not the survey, but maybe like a half-page flyer, like the hand
Give them a
someone.
QR code. Yeah.
Yeah, and we did this the last time. We created like a handbill that was like, MBTA communities, here's the website, here's the survey. Well, we can do that as well. And I'll have to figure out a logistical way. I think putting out hard copies at the COA and the library is a good idea. How those get returned to us, I'll have to make like a box or something.
Yeah, you got to collect them.
Yeah, because I'm not going to ask people to mail them to town hall.
Never get 'em. You'll
If
never
they
get
want to,
'em.
they can do it, obviously, but, it'll
I
be
think
like a
those
little
should be
craft
the only
project.
two places for hard copies, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
And except maybe in your office, Tim, if somebody's in town hall and wants to pop in.
Yeah.
Great.
I am thinking about the group of people that aren't, necessarily electronic savvy, My mom.
Yeah. No, it's good.
She'll be a paper copy. But so, I mean, not everybody's going to be, but she's up there too. You know, you don't want to miss that group. That group
Yeah.
is important.
She'll pass them out to all of her friends.
She probably would, yeah.
She can return them to the nursery. I'll collect them.
Oh, thank
go
you. You
with
know
Maggie.
what? Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Maggie.
Look at her plant.
And so are we going to, do we have one more topic?
We do, and I'd like to, if, you know, I was thinking we could end at 10 tonight, try to wrap up at 10. But I don't know how, we've all been at town meeting for the last 3 nights, but maybe we
Don't feel
could just
guilty
run
ending
through.
at 10. It's okay.
No. Maybe we could run through just quickly. We're not doing any evaluation of districts yet, but just the criteria.
I think we ran,
be nice.
yeah, we did run through this before, so if
I
we
know, that's
run
why
through
just
it
a review.
again,
There is
if you know, you
spreadsheet, I
should
think it's
see
the
that there's a tie between the questions in the survey and the rating here. So like on preserving the physical character of the town.
Tim, would you be able to pull it up on your screen? Yeah. Okay, great.
No, now, those highlighted in yellow, those are me.
Okay, I didn't know who they were.
That was me.
You had a few that you were adding.
So yeah, it was just a few that I had contributed, but and I highlighted them in yellow so it was I could recognize what I had done.
I wasn't quite sure what you meant.
Open for conversation, right?
Yeah,
So
Let's run through each one. If
That's
we don't
fine,
get
yeah.
through it by 10, then we don't get through it.
Right.
But I think we should talk about each
Yeah,
one.
I do too. That's okay. So allowed height is comparable to existing in the district.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
I don't have to read through each one, but if we scroll down, allowed height is comparable.
So the second one was really just trying to get at if, you know, even if you don't have a multifamily on the parcel, that you're not going to allow it to be something we don't already have
In town. Sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I like the way you put excluding 40B projects. Seriously.
Well,
You have to.
you have to.
Because people
Yeah.
will look at it and say, well, look, what about that big building?
Yeah.
How come?
And then the next one is just about size, right?
Yeah.
The kind of building size.
In typology is architectural style, right? Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, that's right. Or it could be like it's a mixed use, you know, like so you have a mixed use typology versus a 3-unit typology versus a garden style apartment typology, right? So not just architectural style, but kind of maybe building use or mix of use typology.
I like this, Sean, that you added the allowed finishes.
You know, I just think my only thought was, you know, sometimes you can get like some great variation, and all of a sudden somebody wants to come in and put ACM panel on a house or something, you know. So that was it. You know, as long as the finishes are consistent, you know, if we have,
Right.
you know, brick, you
So
know,
is this getting to the design guideline?
I don't know where it belongs, but you know, if it doesn't belong here, it's just a concern I had.
Because these are
Yeah,
sort of bigger picture.
I think it's tough. I think it's tough in by right zoning to kind of get into the granularity of materials. That being said, site plan review, design guidelines, that is, you know, that might be a more appropriate and traditional place for that sort of thing. So agree, if that's a priority for you, I think there's a space for it. I think if we try to put it in the zoning itself, we're going to get dinged for it.
Okay, it's fine. As long as we capture it someplace, I just.
The
should know.
guidelines, you know, design standards, we should look at
Yeah.
the ones that I put some time into that went into that, what was Article 1
Yeah.
before?
Yeah.
That's the place I think it would go. If
Okay.
not in the standards, then in
fine.
the follow-up guidelines.
Then I'm fine striking it here
Okay.
as long as we capture
And
it
then we-
somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. I was trying here on B to figure out what criteria would get at the not exceeding the requirements. These in blue were the criteria, the guiding principles from previously, right?
Yeah.
So how do you measure something like that? It seemed to me density is in the zone, is in the statute. unit capacities in the statute and the district size is there. How are we going to parse that out? I'm not quite sure, but some sub-districts that might get suggested might not be a minimum of 5 acres.
I was just going to say.
that one's
a
killer.
That would, we would just have to note it, right?
Yeah.
And some of them might not give us much unit capacity, but give us a lot of land area, which would be hard too, right? That would ding us. So I still think they're valuable to put here. We'll have to, as we look at the districts, figure out how we rate something, it's a little harder, I think, than some of the other of these criteria.
Tear downs.
And then, on the tear downs. That existing building, I think existing land is single family and land is vacant. It's pretty straightforward, right? The next one, the existing building value is high. That's something where it's a new building or something that's recently been renovated. So,
Oh, you mean dollar value?
dollar value, yeah. It kind of went to that RKG study where they said the ones that were most likely to happen were the ones that didn't have as high a building value. So if we want to disincentivize a tear down, if the property has a building that's of a high value, it's not likely to be torn down, right?
Yeah. And the downside to the tear down is a big boxy building that's put in its place, right? Because a lot of times in my business, it's cheaper to tear something down and just build new. Maybe you save the foundation, the connections, but you build all new.
There's so much people attribute the character of the town to its building stock. And I appreciate what you're saying, Jim, because as an architect, sometimes designing something to meet the new codes with an existing building is a lot harder than just starting from scratch. But I think when we think about, you're not eliminating the opportunity for a tear down. You're just trying to disincentivize where you're locating your districts, that you're not making your historic properties or your new properties prime targets, right?
Right.
So like Idiot Wharf would be an example, or the new Hendry's building. If those were included in the zoning, those would not be likely to be torn down.
You would hope not. Yeah.
So what it might be is that you're giving a zone a higher value if you actually have a low existing building value, because you might actually get units there, right? Or a low property, like the property doesn't have as much value because there's no building on it.
Right,
So-
the existing building's
It's
high.
Columbus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So this one is really getting at, if you do too small a property, then you're likely, only way you're going to get something is a tear down. So you want to right size the parcel size. That's what C4 is.
Back on the value, do we need to define value? And I mean, is that, do you think that's going to, existing building value was high, dollar value, or is value equivalent to, does it say enough?
Yeah, historic value.
Yeah, I mean, everybody
value,
might value it in different ways. Yeah.
architectural value.
That's where I thought in the beginning you were going with it, but
it's
Oh, I
dollar
see what you're
value.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that we could clarify
I mean,
that.
I guess you could put another line in, that's just historic value. This could be dollar value.
yeah, dollar
Sure.
value. It's a good
Yeah, you
call.
could. I
Yeah.
agree. Do both. Yeah.
Like the Swit Hat House has probably $0 value, but it has a significant historical,
Right.
Yeah.
and it's a
Right.
defining building of that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Cheryl, so this is an internal document for you all. Do you mind editing this? Or, I don't know. Should I?
Do you want me to? I can. You want me? I'm not doing it live on the screen though, right?
Why can't you do it, Tim?
It's not that I can't do it. It's that it's like reformatting and like whatever.
I'll do it.
Oh.
I'll make a note. No worry. So we're going to expand C3.
Cheryl, I'll do it. Don't worry about it. So C3 needs to be.
Yeah, so just
Building dollar
insert a
value.
row.
Dollar value.
Just insert a row, right?
Yeah.
we're saying dollar
Just put
value?
the word dollar in there, yeah.
Assessed value?
Assessed
We could also
value.
Assessed value.
Okay. There you go.
Good, that's good.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
I think as for that last note there that I wrote, at this right now, it makes little sense to me, so it probably makes no sense to you. I had a stream of conscience when I was keying, and I don't know, I can't even, I'm trying to wrap my brain around what I was thinking about. So I just delete that too. Yeah.
That
Just-
probably, yeah.
Just do a C three, and I mean, we're gonna need a C5.
Yeah, I'll do all that stuff later. I'm not
But
gonna.
it's
All right,
lacking
great.
design
Nice.
character. I think it
Nice,
has design.
nice.
But I think we answered
think
that
we've
with the other
achieved it,
ones.
yeah.
This one's very straightforward. I mean, in terms of whether it's in a district or not, right? So, to the extent that, that's still one of the
Roll through
primary
that.
criteria.
So large, non-residential parcels.
So I went through, and the numbers that you see here were based on looking at the spreadsheets that UTIL provided us. I did this back in January, so I'm not going to tell you that it's perfect, but I did spend time with those spreadsheets, and I've told you that I've done some
Yeah.
more analysis
Yeah.
on these areas, so we can go into that
Yeah, at our
at an
next-
upcoming meeting. Yeah, if we can do it
Like
the
to
next
do that
one.
the next
Yeah.
meeting.
But this gives, what was surprising, a little bit surprising to me was that there aren't as many parcels at 7,500 square feet as you might think. So we set all of our dimensional criteria and our density and everything around the 7,500 square foot parcel. So it's something to think about. But anyway, this just categorizes
Meaning we
the
gotta go
size.
lower?
Well, not necessarily. We could. What does that look like? What if we allowed more than 3 on certain sizes? What does that look like? I'm not making any suggestions at the moment, but
I
just
am. I don't have a problem with going lower. I don't have a problem with going to 4 on 7,500, but
Yeah.
yeah.
so. But it's just I think it's important to understand the lot sizes, and one of the things that drove us needing higher density someplace was the density we were getting here. And part of it was driven by that minimum lot size connected to the 3 units.
Yep.
So I've been looking at that, seeing if, I think I mentioned before,
drags.
if there's a way to raise that a little bit, then we don't have to go as much somewhere else, right? So it's kind of this tipping it a little bit to closer to a balance. Not 100%, of course, because it's just so different with these smaller lots. So this is just getting at lot size. It's pretty straightforward.
Yep. Like
So that leads to a question about the FAR. Maybe that's not here, but I know that, residents have been concerned or brought up the fact that, that maybe the FAR should not be consistent.
I agree, yeah.
So I don't know if that,
Yeah, no,
if an FAR should be assigned to each parcel size.
let's see, so
Oh, tricky.
I think,
That's a good
Yeah, it
idea.
should be like,
Great
I
idea.
think
Yeah.
in an inverse
Well, this is-
relationship.
yeah, it's one of the interesting things. Been looking at the missing middle literature that's out there, and they do kind of tie the larger the lot, you kind of scale up, but the building sizes stay the same. So, and the unit sizes stay the same, so that if you have a larger lot, you're getting more units. And it's kind of an interesting, there's some interesting examples. At some point, I think I'd like to run through that too, because it's not something that we really delved into before, but it's a way to keep these buildings manageable in size and not overwhelm, the existing buildings and the neighbors. So last time we got FAR into the picture kind of late, we kind of just got it in. But I do think that is, and having multiple buildings on a property I think is a way that this could work differently. How we get
talk about that,
FAR
yeah.
into here, I guess, this is just on parcel size, Maggie, so we need to kind of flag that and see
Right.
where it can plug in. Because this is really more about district location, not so much district standards, right? Although it does tie back
Because-
to
but there's a
maybe,
relationship though.
how about the
between
one
parcel
where
size.
the unit under B, do not exceed the requirements in the statute and the guidelines? And it says unit capacity. Is there something here? Well, I don't think it's there either. I think we're gonna have to think about where it plugs in.
But that's a good thought. And it certainly will when we actually get to the districting.
And then F is pretty straightforward too, I think, in terms of it's either got existing or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then G, that's straightforward too. It's either within a half mile or not. It has access to other amenities or not.
So my question is there a definition of amenity rich? Like how many amenities make as an area rich? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 6?
It's a good question. Yeah, I don't.
Tim, what are your thoughts on that?
Just, I mean,
It
it's a
would have
spectrum.
shops,
I mean,
restaurants.
obviously, I would say, you put something at Central Ave or Milton Station, between the transit, between the restaurants, barbershops, bank, post office, grocery store across the river. That is an amenity-rich area. I think, East Milton, maybe a tier below, just because of the transit is not as frequent. And then, in the town of Milton, there's a little, you kind of fall off a cliff in terms of that stuff. I mean, do you consider Milton Center to be amenity rich because town hall is there and the library is there? Maybe. And then, I wouldn't say like if you live next door to the 7-Eleven, you live in an amenity rich area, although that's a
But
nice
you have
little.
a church and you have hospice
Well, I think, access to shops, cafes.
And DPW.
and GPW.
Go get some salt.
Yeah, I think.
So let's say, is it like retail makes it amenity rich, or is it a service? And is it housing?
I think in
Probably
the
retail.
zoning parlance is probably what Tim was talking about in terms of uses. When somebody else thinks amenity rich, maybe they think they have access to recreational
Right.
fields or picnic areas or pond, like Houghton
Parks,
Pond or whatever. So I guess in the zoning parlance, I took this from previously. I think it was really what you can walk to. It could be that you can walk to parks and recreational, I suppose, here. It doesn't have to be limited to these other kinds of uses.
Like in my neighborhood, we've got one retail store, we've got a couple ponds, we've got the Blue Hills. So that's all recreation. But I wouldn't necessarily consider it
Amenity
an
rich.
amenity rich.
Yeah. Not in keeping
mean,
with the
I think
MBTA
when-
bylaw.
When we talk about this, it's about like, how many of your daily to weekly needs are met in your neighborhood versus outside of your neighborhood.
Right.
And so, it starts to, there's no scientific way to pin it down. During, Little League season, you're in an amenity rich neighborhood if you're right around the corner from the baseball field, but then in the wintertime, oh well.
Yeah.
So it is, you do have to make a little bit of a judgment call.
Okay, great. I think we can keep moving.
I think this next one, these are in orange, were just things that I think came up in discussions that weren't in the guiding principles that were used before.
Lose business use
So I
opportunity.
think, not losing the business areas it's being required versus allowed. I wasn't sure how else to kind of rate this, but it's, I think if we maybe we'll have to come back to it given the hour, but if everybody has ideas on that. And then the affordable housing potential, a lot of people talked about that. throughout the process. And, if you have density trigger at 8 versus 10, like we talked about being able to get, it still would preclude a lot of these parcels. So how much of our district is being targeted to something less than 8 units means it's going against this idea of how much affordable we get. And that's a trade-off people need to understand.
But is the Affordable Housing Trust in here? Contribution to our Affordable Housing Trust? Because doesn't that take care of anything, 3, 4 units?
Our subsidized housing inventory.
And you're talking about,
No, I mean, if you develop a 3-family, aren't we going to put some, require the developer to put some money into an affordable housing trust? So eventually we can.
We can't require that of a private homeowner, though.
The feedback that we've gotten from HLC has been, depending on what your analysis shows, and you do have to, give an analysis to exceed, what's in the guidelines for affordable housing. If they see a threshold of units that's below, 8 is the figure that they've kind of talked about, they would consider that to be kind of in the territory of, prohibitively, expensive to develop. That's a project that wouldn't pencil out, requiring some sort of a contribution, from a 3-unit project. It's, we could do it, but you run the risk of getting, knocked down at the compliance level.
Even I guess we'd have to find out, but even a small one, like a $10,000 donation or something.
I think what they would say then is like, are you doing that of every lot split and subdivision, which we haven't been.
Which we should think about.
But from here going forward, we would.
Yeah, maybe we should think about that as a policy going forward. One thing I would say here, Jim, this is really about rating the districts, not so much some of those other, things that we were thinking about. So that all of the, like if you had every district that allowed more than 10 units, then you would have a higher number of potential affordable units than you would if all of your, units were in that 3 to 8 or 10. Yeah. So the other thing I think a point that Maggie had made is you wouldn't want to see a loss of 100% of affordable like at Unquity House or Winter Valley. So this would just flag that we already have 100% affordable in that potential district so that we kind of, consider that. Mm-hmm. That's what this is really. The other, I think, is still different, that conversation we can have with, I thought the point I think Eric Hokinson made earlier about making sure we get to the analysis that's required to go beyond the 10%, and the 10 is important. Mm-hmm. And then if we're almost the end here, so we can get this done before 10, right? On the vehicle traffic, this was just because, some roads might be able to handle more development than others. So it's more about what's in these potential districts. Mm-hmm. So we can bear that in mind. These were just things that I thought were easily enough identifiable, not really making a judgment, but just it's a fact, whether it's 2-lane or 4-lane, and it has frontage, et cetera. And whether it's been subject to recent studies and recommendations, because some of our roads are, right? The state roads particularly. And then the flood risk.
Is that the most recent report we have, 2020?
Yes, I believe so. I don't know when the Route 28 study and Route 138 studies were issued, but do you know, Tim?
Around the same time, within a year or two.
Yeah.
We could probably assume the whole town is now a traffic hotspot.
Well, maybe. And maybe that won't be an important criteria or something that changes anything.
It's just going to be a blanket, too much traffic.
And then the flood risk, obviously that's something that came up throughout.
Right.
So, I think too, as we look at potentially different districts, we might think about whether there's any other criteria to add.
Yeah, I think this can be a sort of a
working document.
A working document that if things may come up in our discussions on.
This is awesome, though. Well done.
As usual.
I have,
Thanks.
I thought of something when we were talking about the vehicle traffic relating to our demographic information question. Would it be helpful at all to ask how many cars they have registered to their homes?
Ask who?
I don't know.
Oh, on the survey?
Cars versus drivers, actually, right? Both.
Well, if you only have a certain number of drivers, even if you have 6 cars, you only have 2 drivers, you're not going to have more than 2 cars on the road, right?
Yeah, so I think it's
Oh,
more
I suppose maybe.
cars.
But if-
I think it's cars.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
yeah,
I'm
Some
with you.
people collect cars.
I do.
Yeah.
And I also
But if you
yeah.
but if you have 3 drivers and 2 cars, that car's constantly.
But we don't know where they are in that district, so that
So
they may be able to park
Yeah.
that number of cars. I know that there was just recently an incident where a trash vehicle could not get in because one of the side streets off Elliott Street, and this is my biggest concern with the Elliott Street corridor because it's so dense and there's such little area for parking, is the Elliott Street cars were parking on a Valley Road extension.
Really?
Yeah,
And
so
then-
it's just interesting if you're living close within a half mile, how many cars do you actually have currently?
It's a good question.
You know, because most of them are single family, or there could be 2 family.
That, since, maybe that's something that could be in a follow-up also.
Yeah.
Because it's a level of detail
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
adding to that survey we talked about might we don't want too much, right, to discourage people. We want it mostly to help us.
Yeah. There may be other questions that do
Yeah.
come up too, but that's actually not a.
But the potential to handle the vehicle traffic is what I was trying to get at, was
what I
that Elliott Street's a lot different than other streets, whether it's Granite Ave, Randolph Ave, and, even Canton Ave. Parts of Canton Ave are more challenging than others, So I think it's just important to think about the roadways that service the properties that we're in, areas that we're thinking of new districts, or in the
Part of
the other
problem
districts
is even
too.
though Randolph Ave has 4 lanes, it's backed up all the way. So can it really handle the traffic? Just because it has 4 lanes, where maybe, again, I'm not familiar with the traffic on Elliott Street in the morning because I'm not over there. I don't know if it's backed up anywhere. So it could potentially handle more traffic because it's not backed up, but Randolph Ave is backed up all the way. So the potential to handle more is really not there.
Yeah, I suppose it's just
Consideration.
Granted, Ave can't handle anymore either, and that's a 4 lane.
I guess then you could just say we can't handle it anywhere. I mean, if we want to say, have something to kind of measure a district against another, nothing is going to be the perfect spot, that in my view. And I do think we have to be sensitive to areas that have narrow and winding streets, because that's just how much more can that kind of a street take. I get the other roadways. We can't, with the traffic that the town sees now compared to when I first moved here 25 years ago, it's unbelievable. Canton Ave, is totally different than it was. So how important this becomes, it's just something that came up so much. I felt like we need to have it on a scorecard.
Yeah, I think
No, I think so, but just trying to.
But I think we can add if there are things that come up that we feel like we want to include.
Yeah, it's great.
This is
Thank
great.
You.
This is a great.
It's awesome.
So the question, because I know I think this was asked before by some people who came to Citizen Speak. Can we post this so they know what criteria we're looking at, Tim?
Cool.
I know it's in an Excel format.
Yeah, we can do that.
You can make it into a PDF.
Into a PDF that somebody could, I think that would be really good to add this to our MBTA materials that are available.
Right now it had the stations the districts from Article 1, and then the ones that had been studied before. So, obviously any new districts would be added to it. So that's the only caveat I have about the top.
That this is not.
I think Cheryl, I would clean all that up and just
okay.
just serve as the blank scorecard for the time being.
Yeah,
That's good. Okay.
yeah, and you're not going to do it as an Excel, right? Because I have a bunch of tabs with other information there.
It'll be a PDF of that sheet.
Yes.
That's good. That's important. Not formatted in French. Okay. So I think that's great. We got through that agenda. I think that's some good things discussed.
Can I just mention, not to discuss tonight, but in the folder was the site plan approval. And, while UTIL is getting started, maybe one of the next things we can talk about too is that site plan approval. Because I think the idea that you had was to pull it out of the MBTA zoning and have it the MBTA zoning refer back to a site plan approval. And I like that approach now that we have the time.
Yeah.
So while we have this little bit of time in the beginning here, I do think next time when we're with UTIL, we need to map out the schedule that people asked about.
Right.
And a community engagement process still. But I do think we can fit in discussion of the site plan approval.
Yeah, and Tim had sent out a couple of examples, and one was a red line version that he sent out. So maybe we can just.
And I think we've even learned from the memory care that, this cut fill analysis, I'd like to get in a little further the requirements. So I was thinking about that a little bit. And then Tim, can you find out through maybe the listserv of planners whether anybody has site design standards in their site plan approval process? Like this refers to what your draft refers to being the board establishing standards. And you have a question about whether we can do it. And maybe that was because you pulled some of it from what I had done in the previously. But I just think it'd be worth knowing whether we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I look at this as our new planning board year, right? And I would offer to the members that we should have a target to do 3-hour meetings.
Yeah.
So you
definitely.
missed Julia's because this was Alex Whiteside always had a check-in at 10 p.m.
Okay.
To see if people wanted to go further or adjourn.
Okay.
Put it to a vote of 10.
You know what it might mean? It might mean that we try to be as effective in what we say, but maybe more concise. And maybe we can get in and out in 3 hours. And not give anything up in terms of the quality of the meeting. Right. So it's good for the residents. I think it was Pete Jackson who said earlier, he was exhausted by 10:30 and stopped listening. So maybe we don't put the residents through that any longer, and we work towards achieving a 3-hour meeting. And most people will stay with a 3-hour meeting. So
I do.
Yeah, nice
Yeah,
work,
I
team.
think that's great.
Yeah.
So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night. Thank you,
Thank you.
Tim.